Hello everyone. Glad to see you. As usual, 5 minutes before the start, we're greeting each other. We're typing in the chat box hello and how are you and where you are from. Hello, Ala. Hello, glad to see you. Ukraine, Kharkiv, Ternopil, Kryvyi Rih, Звенигородка, Kherson, Zhytomyr, Odessa, Kharkiv. Glad to see you, dear colleagues. Chernivtsi, Odessa, Lubny, Mykolaiv. As you are typing, I guess you hear me pretty well. You're not used to me talking to in English during our webinars and conferences, but today is a rather special event. It is a spring conference with 3 absolutely amazing speakers. Well, and this is the reason why I decided to speak English. Sumy, Kyiv region, Kharkiv, Chernivtsi, Kharkiv, Sinyava, Kryvyi Rih, again, Kyiv, Lutsk, Kharkiv, dear colleagues. It's always amazing for us as Macmillan Education to have teachers, colleagues from all around our country. Poltava region, Kovel, Marhanets, again, Kyiv, hello. Kovel, Kyiv, Boguslav, Berdichev, Kharkiv, Sumy, Lutsk, Filenkovo, Mykolaiv, Ternopil. Hello, dear colleagues. Hope you are feeling well. Hope you have sun shining outside as right now in Kiev. Hope you are in a good mood and you are eager to learn amazing things from our speakers. Hello from Irpin, Ivano-Frankivsk, Kyiv, Cherkasy, Ternopil. I love this moment during our webinars and conferences when we can see that we are so big country, which is united by this online event. Super. So 2 minutes before we start, the colleagues are joining and greeting, and we all can see where you are from. It's great. Kupiansk, Sumy, Stepove, Kyiv, greetings from Kyiv, Ternopil, Voznesensk, Bila Tserkva, again Kharkiv, again Kyiv, Khmelnyk, Kyiv region, Vinnytsia. Okay, I think we are ready to start. While you are still joining and typing in your where you are from, on behalf of Macmillan Education Ukraine, I'm greeting you at our major event of this spring. It's Macmillan Spring Conference, and very few words about the plan for today. First of all, I want you to make sure that you will receive the certificate. Be patient. It takes a bit of time. Typically, you receive it during the few days after the webinar. And please, if you haven't received the certificate, first of all, check your spam folder. And this event is being recorded so that you can watch it again and again and share with the colleagues at any time. And you will receive the email with the direct link to this recording on our YouTube channel. A gentle reminder of our conference program. We have 3 speakers. The first speaker is about to start. She's already here. It's Gosha Mroz, and she's going to speak about mixed ability teenage groups and how to deal with them. Then we will have an 1-hour talk from Macmillan author, the author of Gateway, David Spencer. And finally, we will have another Macmillan author, Jacek Lagun. He's the co-author of Get 200 New Edition. And with great pleasure, I'm giving the floor to a friend of ours, Gosha Mroz. Gosha, hello. I know you're here.
Yes.
I can see you, and now I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here, as always. All right.
Just a second.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to see people from so many places. It's amazing. The country is huge, really. So happy to. Okay, so shall I start? Can I take over now, or would you like to say something more, Ina?
No, Gosha,
No? Okay.
the floor is yours, absolutely.
All right, okay. All right, so hello, everyone. I'm very, very happy to see you. I'm speaking to you from Germany, from Hamburg, so quite far away. But what I love about webinars is that we can all meet together no matter where we live at a given moment. And nowadays, as we all know, it's not so easy to meet in person, and we all want to take care of our safety. So hello, everyone. And once again, thank you for attending the webinar. Today, in my session, we will talk about teaching grammar in mixed ability teenage groups. And the session is called All Hands on Deck, because that's what we want. We want all the students to be equally engaged and to benefit from our lessons. We don't want to leave anyone behind. We don't want to leave anyone discouraged. So I'm going to show you some maybe tricks, some things that I do with my teenage students to make sure that they all learn and they all get as much as possible from our lessons, because after all, this is our job, right? And I'm sure we all enjoy it, even if we have some weaker moments, everyone does. So I would like us to start in a slightly different way today. And I would like you to write the name of the grammatical tense. We're talking about English, of course. That was your favorite to study, to learn when you were a student, when you were at school, when you were a pupil, maybe you were a teenager already, but at school. So I believe that we all had our favorite topics in every subject. So for example, I was always very bad at physics, but I loved some parts of it. And there were 2 topics I was good at, only 2, unfortunately. All right, we have future simple, present continuous. We had past simple, present simple. Yeah, past perfect. Ooh, okay. That's brave, right? Normally students are a little bit scared of that. It's a great tense, isn't it? Very useful sometimes. And present perfect. Yeah, a lot of different tenses, right? Plurals also. No grammar. Yeah, I do understand that too. Reported speech. So as you can see, it's been 1 minute and we already have, I think, the whole wide range of grammatical structures that we discuss with our students. And that's it. And that's exactly what I wanted to show you. There is no such thing as one favorite topic for everyone. So here's my question then. Have you ever taught a class of students where the level of all of them was exactly the same? Like everyone was on the same level, and you kick off with your lessons and everyone is equally enthusiastic. They all love the same topics. They're all interested in the same things. They all are, like none of them is tired, or all of them are tired. Like, the level of energy is the same. The motivation behind learning is the same. They all want to pass exams, for example, or they all want to live abroad, or they all want to write books in English. I don't think I've seen any yes, and I'm really glad to observe it, because I also, like, I agree with you. Like, I have never ever in my life, over the last 13 years, taught a group of students where everyone was on the same level. Now, I'm using the word level. I'm going to explain it a little bit later. Sometimes I really wish I did. Sometimes I really wish I taught groups that are on the same level. This would be more or less me if it happened to me, but I don't think it's coming like anytime soon. I don't think it's ever going to happen, to be honest. And I used to be a little bit upset about it, thinking, why our lives cannot be just easier? Why can't we just put students in groups, like, so the level is the same? Like, we have so many students, maybe we can, mix them. Maybe we can put 4th graders with 5th graders, and so on and so forth. But then I actually started to think that, and this is something that I really want to stress in this session, that would make my job much more difficult. Surprisingly as it may seem, it would not make my job easier. So as you all know, I'm going to explain this a little bit later. As you all know, in almost every class we teach, actually, I think we should say in every class we teach, because this almost is just to be on the safe side, because maybe you had a class of 2 students and they're just exactly the same. It's not very likely to happen, but more likely to happen than having a group of 30 students who are all the same, like, in terms of their level of proficiency and other aspects. So in every class we teach, there are some bigger or smaller differences between our students' what? So what are the differences that you usually observe between your students? Like, normally you would say that it would be their abilities, yeah. Some of them learn a little bit faster, some of them need a bit more time, but it also depends on the topic. Motivation, definitely. Some of them are like, yeah, eager to learn English. Some of them, well, maybe not so much, because maybe they just find other things more interesting. Level, yes, we are going to talk about level a little bit more in more detail very, very soon, and also skills. Yeah, so that's, these are the things that we normally mention. Speaking abilities, so fluency, right? Some of them would have this really great conduct of grammar. They don't make mistakes, but they only stay in their safe zone, and they would never try to improvise, because they want to stick to what they know already, right? So they would be very accurate. They wouldn't be very fluent, because they have this sort of block. They're scared to try new things, and that's how we learn. We have to get out of our comfort zone, and and we have to try new things to learn. Some students don't want to do it. Some students are anxious. Some students would actually speak a lot, would be extremely fluent. I had one student who was extremely fluent. Like, he could talk about everything, but the way he spoke was difficult to understand. I mean, in the sense that, like, he did not apply any grammatical rules, and I think we as teachers were used to mistakes, but I sometimes really couldn't understand what he meant. So this can also happen. Someone can be very fluent but not accurate, right? So you see how many combinations we have here. So I decided to organize it a little bit, just to organize our knowledge. Definitely level of proficiency. So some students we call them stronger and weaker. And sometimes we have an A2 level class, and the level will be more or less the same. But sometimes, like when we teach by grades, you have students who only learn twice a week in your lessons at school. You also have students who learn twice a week, but they also have extra classes twice a week. So the level will be naturally different. Like, some students would have more practice. Some students might come from multicultural families. Maybe they're bilingual. Also, that happens. And some students play a lot of online games in which they have to communicate in English, so they use the language, and so on, so forth, right? So that's what I understand by their level of proficiency, but also preferred learning strategy. And I believe this is maybe what you meant when you mentioned skills. Because some students would prefer to study individually. Some students, they need a lot of support from the teacher. And some students feel much more comfortable and confident when they work in groups, so they can get some support from their peers. So these differences would also be visible. Some of them are really independent and like to study on their own, and they have a lot of self-study materials, books, or nowadays probably on the internet, right? So this would also be a big difference that you can easily notice. Now, also enthusiasm and motivation. This is something that I think you've mentioned a lot Like I've seen a lot of you writing like motivation, how they're motivated, and that is true because some students really want, like they need the language to achieve something else, and this is their tool that they need, like the means to achieving something else. For example, studying abroad. Some students, they don't really have this ambition because maybe they don't need it. Maybe they want to do something, and it's also all right. They want to do something for which English is not the most important thing. I mean, I think we can all agree that English is always useful. I mean, obviously, but some students just, are focused on other things that they want to devote their time to. Mood and energy. And what I mean here, that sometimes you teach lessons and you have students who come well rested, they go to sleep early, they wake up early, they sleep for 8 hours, have breakfast before the lesson, and so on and so forth. Sometimes you have students who have morning sport classes and they are already tired in the first lesson. And if your lesson is in the afternoon, they're even more tired because maybe they had a lot of tests. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean that every student would always have these things like on the same level. This can also change sometimes, especially when you work with teenagers. I hope you know what I mean. They have a bad day, right? We all do, by the way. We teachers also have better and worse days. So this might also influence the way they work in our lessons, and we can have a very energetic, a very ambitious student who would be in a bad mood and not really willing to cooperate. And we plan our lesson, and we we know what students we have, so we plan accordingly. And then it doesn't really work out because something happened, because maybe they had a fight with their best friend. So many things can happen, really. Sometimes even like the weather. I can see how sensitive to weather changes I am, so I assume that some of my students are also quite sensitive to that. So let's take some examples, just to think of how these things can be combined. So we have Elena, and her level of proficiency, let's say A2, strong A2, right? She kind of likes learning, and she likes learning because she is very big on social media. She wants to be a fashion designer. She loves fashion and she reads a lot about it, but the most interesting materials are in English. So therefore, like she would know like a little bit more, maybe more vocab. She would know how to name all the clothes. She would know the names of clothes that I don't know because they keep creating new stuff and I just don't I find it hard to catch up with it. So strong A2. She likes to learn with apps because like the internet is a big part of her life. So she likes to use apps and, with flashcards. And she also follows a lot of fashion designers on Instagram. So that's also how she learns. And she knows, she's aware of that. It's not like she learns somehow subconsciously. She's fully aware of that. She is quite enthusiastic about fashion, about the so-called real language, but sometimes she thinks that what we learn in classroom is not really what she needs because it's boring, and she would just talk about fashion forever because it's her biggest passion. And that's what she wants to do in the future. But normally she's very energetic, so she's not very interested in lessons, but she contributes, right? She wouldn't be a student who just sit like that going like, I am not interested. She's working okay. As opposed to Oleg, who has problems with staying focused, staying concentrated, because he also trains football. And he's got a lot of trainings in the morning. Actually, he wakes up at 5 to go to the training at 6, and he plays until 7:30, then a quick shower, and then English lessons, and then other lessons. So normally he's really tired in the lessons, and also because he wants to be a professional footballer and his team is actually quite good, he comes to our lessons still thinking about the strategy from the game that he had played and he had just finished before the lesson. So he's kind of like, he's not fully concentrated. He's tired and he's distracted because he has to think a lot about the strategy in cooperation with his teammates. But he does want to learn English. He has very high level of motivation because he wants to play in the UK in one of these football teams. I'm not very good with this. So he is motivated, but also he struggles with grammar. He struggles with remembering words. He doesn't have a very good memory. I can relate to that. My memory is absolutely terrible when it comes to remembering words. So, and he needs to learn slowly. So his preferred learning strategy would be to buy a lot of books in which things are explained in his native language. So he can, after lessons, he can just open the book, and he really likes theory, which is good, but he knows theory quite well, but he gets confused when he needs to put it in practice. So that's Oleg. And we have one more student. We have Zhenya, and Zhenya is this typical, really good. She's good at everything. She gets best grades at everything. She's always very motivated, and she likes to learn on her own, and she also likes to study in the classroom. She uses a lot of applications. She does everything she can to be really good at English, mostly because she wants good grades. She hasn't thought about her future yet. She hasn't thought about her career, so she just wants to be the best student. And she's, as I said, really energetic, which is sometimes problematic because she dominates our classroom. Some students, they want to say something and she would interrupt. It comes from a good place, but sometimes we have to be careful with her because she's a little bit too much, but we don't want to discourage her. So you see, these are just 3 students, and all of them are on A2 level. All of them. But as you can see, 3 totally different people. And normally when we teach, we don't have 3 people, we have 30 people. So each and every person, each and every student that we teach would be a totally different personality and different motivations, different energy, different goals. And that's what we normally face. And our job is to adjust our lessons to the needs of all of these students. And I'm going to be thinking about these 3 students, so keep it in the back of your head. But, normally it's many more than 3. So I said that all of them are on A2 level. And we tend to label things with these levels. So we start with A1 up to C2. Now, I'd like to stop here for a moment to show you, because when you think that you have a group of students on A2 level, the level should be the same. But many of you, and also I've mentioned that sometimes we have a class with students on different levels. And what I mean is that the level is the same. The level is still A2. But if you look at the Common European Framework, and if you have a look at this A2 level and read it, it's really, really general. What does it mean to be on this A2 level? We like to, I think we are aware of that. We are aware of what it means. We are aware of some grammatical structures we have to teach and some vocab. But let's just have a closer look at it. So the students should understand, by the way, sentences and frequently used expressions related to areas of most immediate relevance. So basic personal and family information. And already here, we can see the differences because Zhenya is the only child, and Oleg he's got 5 brothers. It's a big family. And also shopping. Some of them love fashion, so they know everything about clothes and shopping and types of shops and everything. But let's say Oleg is not that interested because he doesn't care much because he's got more important things to do. So here we already see some differences within the same level. But this is not all, because if you look further, they are supposed to be able to exchange some information and to talk about familiar and routine matters. Now, familiar and routine matters, you can see it's quite general, familiar, but different for everyone, right? They would wake up at different times, they would interact with their families differently, and they would, their daily routines would be different because Oleg has got 5 brothers, so it's the 6 of them, so they share, right, their duties, but maybe one of these girls is, as I said, is the only child, and then she has to do a little bit more to support her family because her parents work long. So this is also a difference within this A2 level, right? And also, they are supposed to describe in simple terms aspects of their background, immediate environment, and areas of immediate need. Again, immediate environment. For example, some of them live in a big city, but some of them live in the outskirts. Maybe the parents of one of the kids have got a farm, and they breed animals and they grow plants, and as opposed to the parents of another student who work in a big corporation. So you see, these things would also be different. So it's a little bit overwhelming when you think about everyone, every single student in detail. But I believe that instead of treating it as a challenge, and don't get me wrong, it is a challenge, and I'm not going to say it isn't, but I think we might try to sort of switch our perspective and start to think about it as an opportunity. And that's what I want to show you now. I said at the very beginning that I think if my class of student, like if every student in my class was on the same level and had the same set of skills and motivation and so on, it would be much more difficult for me to prepare classes, because I would miss so many opportunities in which they can learn just because they're different. And that's what I'm going to show you. And I'm going to do it by showing you some examples of tasks from All Clear course. And I took 3 levels, right? So level 5, level 6, level 7. We're going to go level by level. And then you'll see how I normally approach such opportunities. I don't want to say challenges. I want to say opportunities, because I do believe these are opportunities. So we're going to start with level 5. I chose unit 6, and grammar is present continuous, right? It's not only present continuous, but we're going to focus on present continuous. So this is what we have. And I always start with checking what I have before the lesson, because I'm sure you're aware that with mixed ability classes, it's good to have a lot of resources, because then you have a lot to choose from. So it's a little bit easier for you to adjust, and some students work slower. So we can assign one task for them. And then if some, like for fast finishers, we can assign some other tasks. So we have 2 pages of exercises. We have grammatical explanation here. As you can see, we've got 7 tasks here, really, like 8 exercises. That's already quite a lot, especially, our lessons are not that long. If you work, I assume it's 45 to 60 minutes. Normally it's 45 minutes, right? So that's already a lot. And this is just the restricted practice, right? And we also need our students to practice freely, and we also need to introduce the topic. So this is already a lot. Sometimes it's even more than we need in one lesson, which is great, because then we can use it for revision. We also have this grammar reference, and where things are explained in detail, and you also have some extra exercises. So you can also you can assign them as homework if you don't use the workbook, or you can just do it as a revision, or you can do it 3 lessons later, or if you can assign them to weaker students if they need more practice, and so on and so forth. So this is what we're going to teach: present continuous. Okay, and I would like you to keep, I'm showing the pictures of these 3 students we talked about at the beginning, because I want you to have it in the back of your head that each of our students is different. So, challenge. What would be, in your opinion, the biggest challenge of teaching present continuous in a mixed ability class? If you look at, like, here, we've got the structure, you can see it, and we have both affirmative, negative, interrogative, and short answers, so quite a lot. What, in your experience, is the biggest challenge with this, with present continuous? I just need, like, some examples from you. Like, I'm sure you taught this lesson and many times, probably in present continuous, and it might seem quite an easy topic, but I'm wondering if you can maybe think about some challenges that you have faced teaching structures, such as, like, I'm jumping, am I jumping, I'm not jumping, and so on. And I see that we've got spelling, we've got verb to be, and also, sometimes we have to pick a good method of presentation, and this also depends on our class. But I see that many of you write the verb to be, right? Because we have 3 different forms of that. We have to know which form should be used where. So ing does not seem to be such a big problem, but this to be that has to agree with the subject, indeed. So the challenges that I normally face with present continuous is, as you said, and that's the first thing that came to my mind, auxiliary verb to be. I do think the ing ending might be sometimes a challenge, mostly because the structure is quite complex. I mean, it's easy for us, but that's our job. We teach English. But you have to first look at the subject and decide which form of to be goes with the subject, then find the correct form, and then you have the verb, and then you have to add ing. It's just a long, complex structure, and this can be a problem. Also, in questions, normally when we teach present continuous, our students are already familiar with present simple. Now, in present simple, when you ask questions, most of the time you use the auxiliary verb do, does. Now, here you have this inversion, which can be tricky because our students already learned that to make questions, sometimes you add a word. Here you don't really do it. So it's like a new rule. It's not like they can take what they already know. And, so for example, do you go, did you go, right? This is pretty similar. Here it's different. To some students in our lesson, it might be a new structure. They might not have seen it before, or they probably have seen it before, but they might not have discussed it before and reflected on it. And of course, as in every class, this is like a general challenge, not directly related to present continuous. Some students would just work much, much faster. And now, let's have a look at some opportunities that this structure opens up in our lesson. Because of course, there are many challenges, and you have also mentioned so many. But first of all, we can drill the verb to be very, very well. And this is a verb that we need in many tenses, not only in present continuous, but also in present simple, right? This is a table, I am a teacher, and so on and so forth. So it is a new structure, it is quite complex, but it has a verb that is also useful in other structures. So this is a great opportunity for us to make sure that our students read it well, so they use it correctly in present simple, which, as you know, is not always the case. Also, I'm not sure if this is true for all Slavic languages, but in my context, and I think I would hazard a guess that in your context as well, we don't, in Polish, which is where I come from, like I come from Poland, we don't really distinguish between, for sentences in present continuous in English, we would use the sort of like present simple, which is like our grammar is built in a totally different way. So you cannot always have a direct translation. So, and same goes with other tenses too. So I think it's a great opportunity to show our students that they say something that can be understood differently. That if they say, I am living in Kiev, maybe it would make sense in their native language, but in English, I understand. If you say, I am living in Kiev, I understand that it's not for long. But when you say, I live in Kiev, I understand that this is your place of permanent residence. So this is a great opportunity to show our students this approach. Like, don't only think about what you want to say, also think about what will be understood, which is extremely important. I start doing this with my students very early because I think they respond well, and I think it makes their lives easier, also my life a little bit. And also another opportunity, and this is a general opportunity that opens up in every mixed ability class, which is, generally speaking, every class. It allows students on different levels to cooperate. Again, I use the word level. I mean students within this A2 level, but strong A2, weak A2, right? Because we do stay in the same level, so please do not get me wrong here. And just like in real life, because in real life, we also speak to people who would have different accents. Sometimes I now live in Germany, and I met, not a lot because of the pandemic, but I met some German people, and some of them have excellent English. Some of them have good English, but very, very strong accent. And sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to understand them. And this is just real life. Then you work with other people and you have different accents, different, like some people in your office will be on A2 level and some people will be on, I don't know, C2 level. So this is, you also have to be able to adjust. So, the first thing that is, this is something that I've mentioned already, but I do want you to remember about it, because with good courses, you have a lot of materials provided, and I do encourage you to dig, to search, to check your options, because the more exercises we have to choose from, the easier it is for us to adjust the material, because we just have, just by assigning different number of exercises, we already solve part of the problem. So I believe this is extremely important, and it also saves us a lot of time because we don't have to go on the internet, search for extra activities, or we don't have to write them ourselves. And as you know, it is time consuming, and I really don't like to spend too much time preparing my lessons because that makes me frustrated. I don't want to be frustrated. So I take what the course gives me and I just exploit it, because someone much wiser than me has prepared a lot of great tasks. So I want to use them, right? And also, I do encourage you to check your teacher's book very well. Because, for example, for All Clear, what you have in teacher's book, which I absolutely love, is for every lesson, you've got these mixed ability solutions. So you already have some hints on how to deal with mixed ability classes. And here, this is just an example. Because I have a lot of exercises, I can adjust them to my mixed ability classes. So, for example, in exercise 4, in which we ask and answer questions, for weaker students, First, allow them to write down the questions. And when they're writing down the questions, the stronger students might do another exercise, and then we have speaking, because we have a lot of exercises. And also, we have tasks for fast finishers. This is also mixed ability, right? Some students would work faster, right? So for fast finishers, not only do they have to fill the gaps, but they also have to cover the text later and use present continuous to describe pictures. But I also like to add some activities, my own activities, to help my students practice more. And because I don't like to base my mixed ability lesson plans just on the exercises, just on the number of exercises, because I think there's more you can do and you can have more variety and then, keep the motivation level a little bit higher. So let me show you some of them. The first task I want to show you is, let's say we have 3 students. I call them A, B, C just because it was a little bit easier. And a very simple thing, which does not require any preparation really. And this is something that I do after we have done some exercises. So they have already practiced the structures. This is not what I do at the beginning of the lesson. I do it like in my free practice stage of the lesson when I let students, play with what they have just learned, or maybe also in one of the following lessons as the revision state. And the game is very simple. I don't know if you've ever played it. I play it with my friends with whom we speak the same language, just for fun. Sometimes when we drive a car and want to kill some time, we'll play this game really. So one student starts with a subject and says, for example, I. The next student, we are in present continuous. The next student has to adjust the auxiliary verb. So if it's I, then it cannot be is or are, but I am. So the next student says, am. The third student has to use the verb with ing, right? So you see, like for now, each student practices different thing, but then they're gonna switch roles. So I am sitting, and you can just finish here. But why? Because you can go further and to make it fun, and also this would allow the weaker students to challenge stronger students, okay? Because the way I do it is I normally, and this is also what happens in my classroom, the weaker students would stick to very simple words. So for example, let's say A is our weakest student here. I am sitting, and then in the classroom, and teacher is, and now you see after 3 rounds, the weakest student has to already use the ing word. And while they do it, it's a lot of fun. They might make mistakes, but they should correct each other. That's what happens in my classroom. The stronger student will say, oh, no, wait, is, not are, right? And they can create some funny sentences, and they all, because even if they don't say the whole sentences, they hear them all the time. So there is like a lot of drilling. It's a very simple game. You know it very well. You've played it, but I just want to show you how it can, how our mixed ability class students can benefit from that. So just to not only to play it, but also to understand what happens, right? And how it can be, how it can support them. Now, you can also play some variations of this game. So you can, for example, arrange students. So the weakest student would say the subject, the average student would say the verb, and the strongest student would say the remaining part. Or you can, if you want the weaker students to practice to be, the strongest student, this is what you see in the example here. The strongest student, in this case A, says the subject, the weaker student has to adjust the verb to be, and the stronger student continues with the sentence, right? Or yet another variation, it's the very bottom of this slide. The weaker student gives the subject and the verb. So she is. And then the stronger student goes looking at us. So the weaker student is challenged and also practices the subject-verb agreement. The stronger student can be a little bit more creative here, so it's also not boring for them, because we can say, okay, these sentences have to be about this classroom, or these sentences have to be about the whole school, or about the city, or about probably something that we see because it's present continuous, so we want to make sure that it's happening at the moment, right? So so this is what you can do, and it's still the same game, and it's just like zero preparation. But look how much you can practice, and you are in charge. You decide who practices what. So if you see that you have weaker students who struggle with to be, ask them to say the first part of the sentence, the subject and the verb. Very simple. It really works, and it's does some magic in our class. And it's also fun. So, it's good, I believe. I like to have fun in my lessons. So as I said, sorry, just to sum up. So our weaker students get a lot of opportunities to drill the to be forms, and our stronger students, they are challenged because they have to make these sentences true if that's the rule, but here you choose. I normally say that I want these sentences to be true because also if the weaker student says she is, we have to, look around the classroom and we can only pick the activities that some girls are doing. But if the student says we are, then we have to look at something that we all do. You see, there's a lot of thinking here. It's not so easy. You cannot just say anything. So it works. Okay, let's move on to the second task. Now, the second task is much more difficult. And this is something that I mentioned in the opportunities section, that present continuous and present simple, we have this opportunity to show our students the difference between what they think they say and what might be understood. Now, this is a difficult task. It takes some practice, but it's absolutely fantastic. I do it also with my adult students because I also teach adults. No matter their age, I just teenagers, young teens, adults, we do it. So let's say we have a very strong student and a weaker student. We are practicing present continuous. The weaker student asks questions in present continuous. For example, are you reading Harry Potter? The stronger student has to say no. Every time they answer the question, they have to say no, and they have to clarify. And look at what they do here. Are you reading Harry Potter? No. I read comic books, present simple. I am reading Spider-Man now, present continuous. So here they show us that they understand the difference between present simple and present continuous, because present continuous is not only something happening at this very moment, but I can say, I am reading The Architecture of Happiness, not at the moment, because at the moment we're talking, right? We're in the webinar. But generally speaking, around the moment of speaking. Are you listening to the teacher? No, I always listen to the teacher, but now I'm listening to you. You see, so this is really not easy, especially if the question is difficult. So it takes a lot of effort from the stronger student to come up with something that makes sense, right? And that's why I say this task is not easy, but it's just, I love it. It really works great with my students. They are maybe a little bit lost at the beginning. There's a lot of thinking. You don't have to do 30 examples. You can do 2 examples in the lesson. It already is a lot. And as you can see, except for stronger students practicing, the differences between present simple, present continuous, our weaker students, they drill present continuous questions, you see, because they keep asking them. They can even read them. You can prepare, if you want to have more control over it, you can prepare questions and they can just read them, because this is also practicing. They read them, they hear the answers, and even though they do not focus on the difference between present simple and continuous that much, they still hear it, right, from the stronger student. And one more task for this level before we move on to the next level. Something that was inspired, not really inspired, but I forgot about it for quite some time. And recently I had a conversation with my friend here who is a programmer and he codes. Now, I don't know much about coding, but I know it tends to be difficult. And he told me that sometimes he had this problem, he made a mistake in his code and he couldn't find it. So I said, and this was a moment I remembered about this activity that I should, I forgot about it for a long time, and I really want to get back to using it because I remember how well it worked. Going backwards. Now, this is something that I do when I check my students' essays. Very often, I read the essay, blah, 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 correct mistakes. When I want to check for typos, commas, and so on, I go backwards. I read from the last word to the first word. Because when you read, normally, your eyes tend to, maybe not notice certain things. But if you read backwards, it's so unnatural that you do have to focus on every word, right? So, one student says singing. The other student has to think of what goes before the ing verb. What is it? It's the auxiliary verb to be, right? And they can choose. So this can be the weaker student because they can choose whichever auxiliary verb they want, because here it doesn't matter really. It matters in the next step when you adjust the subject. So you can go singing, are we, and then the last person. So it's a pair, right? So person A singing, B are, A we, person B, so the weaker student here, has to repeat the whole sentence. or you can switch roles, right? Because this is so like it requires a lot of thinking from both weaker and stronger students. So, and of course we also like, I say weaker, stronger, but sometimes the differences are not that big. It's not like someone is excellent and someone is terrible. No, sometimes it's just a small difference. So the stronger student says singing, the weaker student the weaker student says singing, the stronger student picks the auxiliary verb, and the weaker student has to adjust the subject, and then the stronger student, they have to, remember the whole sentence. So here, I think it doesn't really matter that much who starts, because they can also, switch roles. So there's a lot of ing drilling, because it's not the most difficult part in present continuous. The auxiliary verb is probably a little bit more difficult, but there is a lot of space for practicing ing. We also have to practice it, right? And we can practice all forms here, because we can say singing are we are singing, but talking she is she talking, right? You can add not there, and you can practice so many forms here, like everything you want, questions, negative, positive statements, anything you want really. So these 3 tasks, you can use them with any level really, and you can use them with any topic, because I do like to use tasks that are easily adjusted to many levels, many lessons, many topics, and they don't only work for one specific area of grammar. Let's jump to the next level. So this is going to be level 6 of all clear course that I assume like most of you are familiar with, but I will show you if you're not, don't worry, you will see it. Unit 3, grammar, past simple. Okay, so this is what we have. We have 2 pages. Again, we have 8 exercises with past simple, a lot to do here, and things are also explained. And we also have grammar reference and some extra tasks. And the challenge. Now, what is the challenge of teaching past simple? There are many challenges of teaching past simple, but something that comes to your mind with past simple. Irregular verbs. Yes, exactly. This is really like something that we have to learn, and there's no shortcut here. So I believe the biggest challenges is, first of all, distinguishing between regular, irregular verbs. Which are regular, which are irregular? I mean, irregular are those that are not in the irregular verb chart, but there's no rule for that, right? Also, then learning irregular forms, right? Then we have in negative and interrogative structures, we have infinitive forms. So in a positive sentence, say, I went to school, but did you go to school? This is already confusing. I didn't go to school, right? So this is what I don't know how many times you heard, I didn't went to school. I hear it very often. All right. And some students already know a lot of past simple songs because they listen to the music, because they watch films, they watch cartoons, they play games. Maybe they have extra lessons after school and they've already mastered the past forms. But for some students, it might be difficult because it's new. They might be discouraged by the amount of verb forms they have to memorize, right? There's a lot of them. So these are the challenges. Now, what are the opportunities? I believe the opportunities here, which is what I focus on in my lessons. First of all, it's very, very easy to find examples of past simple in songs, videos, games, and students can easily relate to them. So if you're searching for examples, good examples of past perfect, might not be so easy to find it, but past simple, absolutely everywhere. So you can, sometimes what I do is I watch TV series and I take screenshots, or I ask my students, okay, so what series you watch? They tell me, I play it with subtitles, and then I take screenshots just to show them examples of how things can be used. And for example, when you go with past simple, right? And another thing is that actually, and this is something that also happened a couple of times in my class, sometimes we have students who are a little bit weaker, but they might have an excellent memory. Maybe they're really good at mathematics too. Maybe they remember formulas and they also remember words. Maybe this is the easy part for them. So actually, these weaker students can become stronger students, right? Also interesting. And as you know, and as I've mentioned already, always look in your teacher's book, because in your teacher's book, you have these mixed ability ideas. So this already does some job for us, right? You also saw it with the previous course, right? The red one, level 5. You already have some mixed ability solutions. And also you have some extra activities. So if you have students who have already learned the past forms of verbs, you can just assign this extra activity, which is pronunciation. So d to id, right? Arrived, cooked, wanted. right? So then you can focus on these weaker students and drill some verbs with them, and the stronger students are challenged and they have to focus on the pronunciation, which is also can also be quite a challenge for them, right? Because normally they learn the forms, but what about how you say them, right? So they can make these tables. This comes from the teacher's book. It's not my activity, it's not my idea. It comes from your teacher's book for the course. So always have a look at it, because an extra activity can be used as a time filler, can be used if you still have some time to kill at the end of the lesson, but can also be used with mixed ability classes to challenge the stronger students a little bit more. Okay, so we've got the first task that I do with my mixed ability classes. And in the previous, in level 5, I showed you some extra activities that I do independently of the book. So we do exercises and then I do some speaking activities. Now I would like to do something slightly different. I would like to show you extensions of specific exercises from the book. Okay, so a slightly different approach. So you have a lot of ideas to choose from. So this is our task. Complete the sentences with the past simple form of the verbs in brackets. So what I do with my students is, first of all, because they do have this exercise and they do have, at the end of the book, they do have this chart with irregular verbs. The stronger students, they fill in the gaps and then they read the sentences out, and the weaker students, they have to go to this irregular verb chart and they have to check if the answers are correct. They are responsible for that. All right. Now, not in this specific exercise, mind you, because here we only have regular verbs. But, so normally I'll do it when I have irregular verbs, but you can also do it with regular verbs. Even if all the verbs are regular, you can still ask weaker students to double check. So they kind of, they start learning which verbs are regular, which verbs are not regular. And it's also a learning strategy, so cognitive skill. They learn where to search for the answers, and it's in their books, right? So they don't have to do it on the internet, which can sometimes be tricky. And then we take the first sentence. We sailed across the English Channel last summer. And then the students take turns to say more sentences that start with the same subject and verb. We sailed, and then they finish the sentence. We sailed with my family. Like, there are many options, but also they're not they're not endless, right? We sailed with my family. We sailed on a small boat. We sailed in really good weather, and so on and so forth. Now, this is already quite difficult because it's prepositions and, a lot of things going on here. But what you can do is put your weaker student and the stronger students in pairs. The weaker student says, we sailed. The stronger student has to continue. So the weaker student would only say, we sailed, we sailed, we sailed. But it's not boring because there are different endings to the sentence. So, it's not like they only say, sail, sail, sailed. It's not drilling like that. It's drilling in a more interesting way. And also the stronger student is definitely really challenged because prepositions, 4-5 days, but in the storm, in a really good weather, on a small boat, right? So you see, so you can also have a lot of revision here, and challenging stronger students. Also, the second sentence, the airplane landed on time, the airplane landed at 3 p.m., the airplane landed in Kiev, and you might have some sentences like the airplane landed yesterday, right? More sentences. Sometimes the sentences will not be correct, and that's all right, because then you have something interesting to discuss. Put them on a board, do the delayed error correction, right? Because here we've got 2 things to practice, and we are really interested in drilling here too. All right, and another variation of this activity, we take another sentence. They traveled by train to Valencia. And then we have stronger students asking questions. How long did they travel? They traveled for 3 hours. Who did they travel with? They traveled alone. When did they travel? They traveled in the summer. Look how much drilling we have here. And it's not only asking questions. Here, the rule is that you always have to use the verb travel. All right? This makes it much more difficult because you cannot say, what was the weather like? You cannot, because you have to ask about traveling. It is not as easy as it seems, therefore not boring at all. And if you do it, you have, especially the weaker students, get so many opportunities to drill some verbs, regular and irregular. And they can also practice, stronger students can practice asking questions in past simple, which is also great, isn't it? And there's another task that I want to show you, and it's also based on an activity from the book. So here we have a picture, and we have to fill the gaps with the past simple, affirmative, or negative form to be. So this is what we're practicing here. And and the sentences describe the picture. So what we do here with my students is they work in pairs, groups, bigger groups, I don't know, individually, like not individually, pairs or groups. And each pair, group, or maybe an individual student draw a picture that illustrates the story they will tell. And if you want to support them, you can say something surprising that happened to you yesterday. And because the story has to be in past simple. Now, when they have finished, they tell the story in past simple. And when they tell the story, the other group, pair, student, they have to draw it. And they compare the pictures, right? So I have my picture. Based on my picture, I'll tell my story. Based on my story, the other group makes a picture, makes the picture based on this, and then we take these pictures and we compare them, and they're never the same, and there's always a lot of fun. And also, if you want to make it a little bit easier, you can distribute some pictures. You can, I don't know, use some pictures that you can find on the internet, or you can just take some pictures from the book. There's a lot, so I usually do that when I don't really have time to search for some more pictures. And this exercise, I love it because, first of all, I decide who works with whom. So I can put stronger, weaker students together. But very often here, I would actually put stronger students together in a pair and weaker students together in a pair or in a group, or divide the class in two. Because that gives the opportunity for stronger students to show what they know and to create more elaborate stories, right? So they can go crazy. And we don't have this situation that we have a pair with a stronger and a weaker student, and the weaker student will make 3 sentences, and the stronger student a very difficult story that will be difficult for the weaker student to understand, right? So this is up to you. You choose, but this gives the chance for stronger students to show off. And also, weaker students are not discouraged, right? Because they work with people on more or less the same level. So a win-win, I'd say. And there is one more thing I'd like to show you, and this time we're going to take level 7. And so we have seen some exercises based on, like, some speaking exercises after we have finished all the written exercises. We have on level 6 seen some extensions to exercises from the book. And now we're going to have a look at the strategy, all right? And I took level 7, you need 5, present perfect. So I decided to choose something which is not favored by everyone, right? We don't have, we don't have present perfect in Polish, so my students really struggle with it because they don't really understand. We don't have this concept in our heads. So first of all, what we have, this is what we have. Excuse me for a sec. There's a lot of talking. I need to stay hydrated. So we have 2 pages. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of material here because we have present perfect, we have affirmative, negative, interrogative, then we have ever, never, and then we have how long with for and since. Now, that is too much for one lesson for my students. I split it into 2 lessons. It's definitely not going to be 1 lesson because it's a new topic. They're not familiar with it. And I assume they haven't learned it before. So what they know, their prior knowledge is regular verbs in present perfect because they're the same as in past simple, but that's all they know. And they don't have the reference in their native language. So I decide to leave how long with for and since for later. And this is also something that is extremely important. Remember not to discuss too many things in one lesson, because the students will be overwhelmed. Take it easy, divide it into 2 lessons. It's better to do, I believe it's better to maybe, I don't know, skip some games sometimes, but to make sure that we have enough time for every topic. So this I'll leave for later. I'm only going to focus on present perfect with ever and never. And I think we can all see the challenge here, right? Some of it I've mentioned already, but so the challenge that I thought about is distinguishing between regular, irregular verbs, just like in past simple, right? But also, so this they kind of already should know, but it can still be a little bit confusing. Learning the irregular forms and distinguishing between irregular forms of past simple and past participle, because sometimes they're the same and sometimes they're different. So there's kind of like a lot going on here, right? And of course, the topic is new, but some students would understand it very fast. So what I do here is, I think I skipped something. yeah, so these are our challenges. So yeah, I'm not going to talk about opportunities here because I want to walk you step by step through what I do, and you will see them yourselves. Sometimes in mixed ability classes, we have these topics that are new to everyone. Therefore, the starting point is the same for everyone. So we don't really have stronger, weaker. I mean, we do have stronger, weaker students, but the differences are not because of based on their prior knowledge, but the differences are their enthusiasm and motivation and so on. Okay, so this takes off a lot of pressure, doesn't it? So what I do here is I go to the previous lesson. In this case, it was a reading lesson. And in good books, when you have grammar, normally you would find examples of target language in reading texts in the same unit. Sometimes also in other units, because of course grammar is everywhere, but in the same unit you should find it too. So I take the short fragment and I ask my students to work in pairs and to find examples of present perfect here. All right. I'm sorry, I wrote present simple in the slide. I'm sorry, it's my mistake. Present perfect. We're talking about present perfect here. All right. Because in the grammar, in the grammar section of the book of this unit, they can see what it looks like. So first, they just need to look for similarities, right? And they have to find present perfect. Now, what they do now, after they have found these sentences, which is almost every sentence here really, they have to change, because they're all affirmative, they have to change them into negative interrogative. And here it gets a little bit more complicated because we have for example, the example of interrogative is have you collected? And here we have the school has bought. Has the school bought? So here already you see, like, this is where the whole fun begins, right? So, and here they get a lot of support from me, and here they start noticing differences between have and has. The next thing we do is, again, stronger students fill the gaps with present perfect, and weaker students look at the regular verb chart and they correct the answers if they're incorrect. So they're giving this very responsible task, right? Which also boosts their motivation. And then they can, switch roles. Or you can do one exercise. Exercise 1, we do like that. In exercise 2, we switch roles. And the weaker student fills the gaps. The stronger student checks the answers, right? So it's entirely up to you. And then finally, we have the speaking task. Okay, so you see, this is all based on what you have in your books. We have a speaking task. And we have some ideas, and we have to ask questions using the present perfect and ever. So have you ever? And what I do here is when I see differences between my students, I can see that some are dealing with it quite well, some still struggle. I would ask my weaker students to use the ideas from the book. So collect money for charity. Have you ever collected money for charity? And they take turns, but the strong students, they do not use the ideas from the book, they use their own ideas. So then they're a little bit more challenged. So student A, the weak student, have you ever collected money for charity? Student B answers, but the student B doesn't go with, have you ever learned to play a musical instrument? They have to make up their own example, right? So you see, they're challenged here. Again, zero preparation, not at all. And that's it. So you can see how you can, even the strategy of teaching the tense, how it can be adjusted to mixed ability classes. So to sum up what I've just told you and what we've just discussed, just four quick questions, very quick. Should we adjust the pace to weaker or stronger students? Now, here there are many opinions. I believe that it's always best to adjust the pace to the students in the middle. So the weaker students, we also have to challenge them. The stronger students are not getting bored. I would say aim in the middle, right? So when you adjust the pace, think like it has to be a little bit more difficult for weaker students, but not too easy for stronger students. Just go in the middle, right? And should the weaker students do all the exercises from the book to get enough practice? I think no. You definitely don't have to do all the exercises in the lesson. And as you saw in this example, you can play. Like with the exercises they do. So one student does exercise 1, the other exercise 2, and they, check their answers, right? So you don't have to do all of them. And I think it's not necessary, but I sometimes do it when my students need more practice. Sometimes it's their homework, right? So you can play with this. Do weaker students stay behind throughout the whole year? Absolutely not. Sometimes something happens. There are these moments, I don't know if you've ever observed it with your students, but something like clicks in their head and suddenly they become great. It happened to me It happened to me personally. I had this moment in my life, 4th grade. It also happened to my students. So please bear in mind that sometimes your weakest students can become your strongest students, and do not put, like, when you put labels of, like, mental labels on them at the beginning of the year, make sure that you update them with every unit at least, okay? And the last question, can stronger students become weaker as the course continues? Yes, this is kind of similar to the previous question. These roles might change, and our stronger students might have some problems, might have some problems at home. Maybe they have a new brother or sister and they're jealous and they're struggling with very difficult emotions. And, you can see it in the classroom, and so on and so forth. So please bear in mind that these things are not written in stone and they're not given forever. They change. And sometimes weaker students, they start, I don't know, maybe their parents decided to enroll them to like extra English lessons, and now they have English 7 times a week. Like, these things can change. So do remember about it when you plan your mixed ability lessons, and do remember about the variety that gives you more opportunities than challenges, I believe. And I encourage you to just shift your focus to opportunities. This is difficult, but without this, I wouldn't have so many other things to do, which I only have because it's a mixed ability class. So thank you very much for attending this session. I hope you find the ideas useful. I encourage you to use them in your next lesson. That's what I always do after conferences that I attend. I take the ideas in the next lesson so they stay in your head. So thank you very much, and I'm wishing you a lovely afternoon and the remaining parts of the conference. Thank you.
Gosha, thank you very much. Really, a bunch of rather useful ideas on the principle take and apply. All the ideas you shared with our participants are really practical, really useful, really inspiring and motivating.
And I
Thank
believe
you
they're
very
very,
much.
very simple, so they don't require preparation. Just be good.
Absolutely. And well, we all feel that you are the person who teaches English and who applies and shares your ideas and your personal experience of using the books like All Clear.
Absolutely, yeah, everything. I've tested everything myself, so yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And see you online, offline during all our other events. And now I have a great pleasure to give the floor to the person who is also a teacher. If you don't know yet, David Spencer is not only Macmillan best-selling author of Gateway and Gateway First Edition, Gateway Second Edition, but he is also our colleague. He teaches teenagers, and everything he puts in his books and in his workshops and in his webinars are tested on his learners. Dave, great pleasure to have you here in Ukraine. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And can you all hear me? If you'd like to just put a yes, if you can all hear me and see me. I imagine that you can. Lots of people saying hello. Wonderful. Lots of yeses. Excellent. That is lovely. Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank, obviously, Macmillan Ukraine for remembering me and for inviting me here today. It's a real pleasure to be part of this Macmillan Ukraine spring conference. I'm sure some of you out there, I'm seeing lots of names going very quickly, but I'm sure some of you I've actually met in person. I know that I've been to Ukraine 3 times. Of course, I've been to Kiev several times. I've been to Odessa. I've been to, there's always a place, Belia Tserkov, where I believe there are lots of trainee teachers that I seem to remember meeting. And of course, Kharkiv, I've also been to. Very memorable trips to Ukraine. I don't know if Irina Kruk is there, who was actually part of Teach with Dave, and she gave me this lovely present, which is next to my computer from Lutsk. Okay, so I've never been to Lutsk. Somebody's there from Bila Tserkva. So yes, I have been there. And of course, I would love to come back again one day when all of this stupid virus has finished. Anyway, it's my real pleasure to be with you. At the moment, I'm still teaching. I've never stopped teaching. And in fact, at the moment, I'm on my Easter holidays. But usually, of course, I still am in the classroom. So I'm speaking to you as the author of Gateway, and also as the author of Gateway, and also as a practicing teacher. And today we're going to look at the question of developing writing. I've seen that somebody's got my book. That's good. Lots of people, I think, are using Gateway, which is a real honor for me that you're using it there in Ukraine. Developing writing. We're talking about writing. We're talking about being in the classroom, also a little bit about teaching online. And I just want to begin this session about writing with an interesting point. Of course, we all talk about native speakers, don't we? So in English, there is the expression native speakers. But what's really interesting is that we don't use the expression native writers. And I think that's fascinating. So when we're born, we sort of all naturally learn to speak. But it's true that sort of not everybody learns to write, even in their own language. There's something that is more complex about writing. And I think that's a fascinating question. The question is, for example, does that influence our L2 learners? Is it more difficult to learn to write? Now, I do believe that writing is one of the most difficult of the 4 skills. And I think it's especially difficult for teenagers. So what I'd like you to do in the chat box, can you suggest any reasons why you think that writing is a difficult skill for our teenage students? Maybe you don't agree with me. Maybe you think that writing is easy. But if you agree, then would you like to put in any suggestions? Why is writing... Right, okay, so somebody's saying, I think that's Oksana, they're saying spelling. And somebody's agreeing with me. Exactly, native writers doesn't exist. So they need to know grammar. They need imagination. Writing is thinking, that's true also. So also it's the fact that it's productive, yes, definitely. They have no ideas, yeah. Fear of mistakes, lack of ideas, vocabulary. Yeah, I think all of these are, I agree with all of these ideas that you're putting up. Too many rules, right? So maybe it's too many spelling rules, too many grammar rules, lack of words, cannot organize their thoughts, and poor imagination, right? I mean, I think that there are lots of reasons why writing is such a complicated skill. And I'm going to sort of like show you some of the reasons that I think it's difficult. And you've already mentioned many of them. So it's good to see that we're on the same page. I think one reason why writing is such a difficult skill is because it's very solitary. So when we write, often, not always, but often we are on our own. In fact, when I write my books, I'm usually sitting here on my own. Writing tends to be a solitary activity, whereas, for example, speaking is obviously not. So writing tends to be solitary, and that can make it more difficult. Students, and many of you have already mentioned this idea, no imagination. I remember somebody put no imagination. Students often think that they aren't creative or that they don't have any imagination. And I think we tend to associate these two ideas, don't we? Writing with creativity, writing with imagination. And of course, many people believe, particularly I think teenagers, I think younger students are not shy about their creativity and about their imagination. But I think that as you become a teenager, you start to become more self-critical. You have like a sort of barrier. And I think many teenage students start to think that they don't have imagination. They aren't creative. Another reason and you've already mentioned this, many of you have mentioned this, this idea that they don't know what to write. So it's not just a question of English, it is a question of English, but it's also a question of what do I write about? The blank page, they're not quite sure what the content is. That's a real big problem. Somebody's just mentioned reading, which I'm going to come to in a second. Writing, and I think some of you already mentioned this, you've mentioned grammar and vocabulary, and even punctuation. Writing needs to be correct. When we're not 100% correct when we speak, it's not always a problem, because the person that we're speaking to will then maybe question, will say, what do you mean? Or can you explain that again? When we're writing, we sort of have to get it right the first time. And as many of you have mentioned, the grammar needs to be right, the vocabulary needs to be right, and the punctuation also needs to be right. And I've got a few funny examples of this to show you, okay? When we write, for example, every prefix or every suffix counts. I'd like you to see this funny little sign here. It says we've got milk coffee, we've got strong coffee, and in the middle we've got tasteless coffee. Now, of course, tasteless coffee, I don't even know what the correct translation will be there, but tasteless coffee sounds terrible, and I'm sure it's the wrong suffix there. I'm not quite sure what the original idea is, but tasteless coffee is completely wrong, right? So we need to make sure we get the right prefix and the right suffix. We also need to make sure that the syntax is right. I'd like you to read this sign and see if you think you understand it. Okay, it says, the cedar group dancing waterfall to fly in the Mandarin duck pond, the myth biography. Now, I am a native speaker. I understand all of those words, but I don't understand the sentence at all, because the syntax is completely confusing. We've got a lot of nouns, we haven't got many verbs, we've got a verb in the infinitive, but if the syntax is wrong, then it's impossible to understand our writing. Here is another question, apostrophes, okay? This is a very funny jar of black raspberry jam, and it says that it tastes like grandma. Now, of course, if your jam tastes like grandma, that's a pretty bad sign about your jam. I think it should be that it tastes like grandma's with apostrophe S, right? Now, it's nearly right, but because of that apostrophe S, it's extremely funny, yeah? If jam tastes like grandma, we have a problem. Exactly, yeah, it should be grandma's. And every letter counts. So when we write, one wrong letter can cause confusion. Now, this was on one of my trips. I was in a taxi. I left my home and picked up a taxi to go to the airport. And the first part is in Spanish. I live in Spain, you probably know. And the second part is the translation. If you pay by credit card, warm, with an M, warm the driver before you reach your destination. And I had to explain to the taxi driver that if one day somebody wants to warm him, it's because of his own fault, because of his own sign, okay? So every single letter, when we write, every single letter is important. And also punctuation. And if you look at the next, look at this lovely punctuation at the end of that sign. I don't know if you know, but in Spain, you can put exclamation marks and question marks upside down. And also, I'd like you to look at that apostrophe S, which is completely wrong, of course. So when we write, what we write, all of our mistakes, they stay there forever. And that's a problem. When we speak, the words that we say, they disappear. Even the mistakes that we make, they disappear in the air. When we write, our mistakes stay there for quite some time. So everything is important when we write, every single letter, every bit of grammar, okay? So we need to be careful. Also, and I think some of you have mentioned this, or you've mentioned it indirectly, many teenage students probably don't write much in their own language. So apart from schoolwork, teenagers, apart from a short text message, teenagers tend to probably write less than in the past. And I definitely remember somebody said this, and I agree completely. Somebody said this in the chat box. Some students read less than in the past. And I think there's a completely direct relationship between reading and writing, okay? The more that you read, the easier it is to write. Reading is like the source of our writing. Now, I do know I have some students who don't who don't read at all, but I do also have some students who read, a book a day. So this is generalizing, but I would generalize by saying that some people need to learn to read a little bit more. And I actually believe that that's an important life skill. And if you use Gateway 2nd edition, you will know that in the life skills sections, I often have sections about reading for pleasure. Reading helps literacy. So the more that our students read, probably in any language, but particularly if they read in English, they're going to learn to write better too. Also, and we're going to talk about this towards the end of the session, there's the whole question of correction. I think that the way that we correct writing is really key to inspiring students to want to read more. So, to write more and to write better. So, the way that we correct, I think, can really be key in this whole process, because often students, they give you a piece of writing, the piece of writing comes back covered in red ink, and then afterwards they don't feel so good about the whole procedure. So we'll discuss positive ways of correcting writing towards the end. Now, I wrote this session quite a long time ago, before I was in confinement, over a year ago here in Spain, and I started writing online. And I personally think that the writing skill has changed slightly because of online teaching. Actually, can you remind me, in Ukraine at the moment, are you teaching face-to-face, or are you teaching completely online, or are you doing a mixture? Can you just remind me there in the chat box? What are most people doing? Online, online, mixed. Okay, blended, right. Okay, so in fact, you might be interested to know that here in Spain, we have been teaching all year wearing masks. But before wearing face masks, I was teaching also online. And I think that online teaching has changed also a little bit the dynamic of writing. And you may agree or disagree with me here. What is interesting in my mind is that in the classroom, speaking is the normal form of communication between students and teachers. The students speak to us, hopefully in English, and we reply to them in English, but speaking. But what I've discovered is, particularly with asynchronous distance learning, so when we're not teaching live through an online platform, when we're teaching asynchronously, then writing becomes an important real life skill. And I think actually that's been an advantage, because I think that what happens is, and again, you can agree or disagree with me, but I found that when I was teaching online, I was more in contact with my students with things like text messages, chat box messages, even some emails. And the interesting thing about this is that they weren't just writing. Often when we do writing in the classroom, it's fictitious writing. No, they're sort of writing for because they have to practice an exam technique, because they have to practice writing essays. But what I found interesting was that often with online teaching, students are writing real writing with real messages, with real questions, explaining things. And so the writing has become like a more like a life skill again, really, more like a real thing, a practical thing that they need to do, not just an abstract thing. And I think the interesting thing about this is that I think many of my students realized that when I didn't understand their text message, when I didn't understand their chat box message, it was because I genuinely didn't understand, and they needed to be clearer. They needed to work on their clarity and their accuracy. So in some ways, I think it actually became quite a powerful tool to help encourage more writing. Writing became a real channel of communication instead of just speaking. I think also, I think some of you have said blended teaching. What is happening at the moment in Spain, just so that you know, is many classes, they might have 2 lessons in the classroom and 1 lesson at home. I think when face-to-face time is limited, it becomes more typical that as teachers, what we do is we give our students some written work to do at home. We're not with them so that we give them more writing, because it's easier to do writing at a distance than it is to do speaking. So I think, again, this has changed the dynamic of the writing skill. And just to give you a very simple idea, but something that I discovered when I started teaching online, is that many little speaking activities can become great mini writing activities. So not all writing in Gateway, we have the developing writing page, but maybe even a speaking activity like this, which maybe you've done, which is practicing the second conditional. It says, when you arrive at school, you see that you aren't wearing shoes, you're wearing slippers. What would you do? Now, the idea for this activity was speaking, but actually in an online teaching situation, we can easily change this into a very nice mini writing activity. And that's what I've done a lot teaching online, is if it wasn't possible to do this activity speaking, then let's turn it into a mini writing activity. So that's an interesting way to think about your lessons. When you see a speaking activity, could it be a mini writing activity instead? Now, the only problem with writing online and writing at a distance is that I think it's true. I think you would agree, right? Maybe when you're writing in your own language on a tablet or on a phone or on a laptop, we often write and make lots of mistakes. These mistakes are usually called typos. And I think these are really dangerous, okay? We have to be careful about typos. This is an example from one of my students, okay? So my students often in Spain, I'm sure your students too, they write the word writing with 2 T's instead of 1 T. But you can see that this is even worse, because when they're typing on a computer or typing on a laptop or on a smartphone, look at this, working with 2 T's, but W-I. And of course, this drives me mad. Okay, but it is true that even us as teachers, and even me as a native speaker, if I'm typing quickly, I make mistakes. And so one thing that I decided right from the beginning was to be very, very careful about all of my written messages to my students. So the first thing that I've suggested here is being a good model. And I do believe this is true. Many, if you read some Amazon reviews on amazon.co.uk, you'll see that many English people make 100 mistakes because they're typing quickly. But as a teacher, I believe that we really have to be careful. Try to be as correct and as accurate as possible. And as I say here, pause and check before you send. And so I do that myself to try and be a good model to my students. Also, of course, I think it's worth reminding our students to switch off spelling and grammar autocorrection, because otherwise our students are not practicing the grammar or spelling. Microsoft is correcting the spelling and the grammar. That's not what we want, okay? And finally, this is sort of semi-serious and semi-joke, but I always say that students need to be reminded to take good photos of their handwritten work. So I think it's good that students do still practice writing by hand. Most exams, most school leaving exams, are still written by hand, not on a computer. So I often get my students to write by hand and then take a photograph and send it to me. But of course, probably you, like me, I get this composition and I can't read a word, okay? So I can't read anything that's there. So I try to encourage my students to take better photos. The way that I did this was making a joke, Star Wars. We all know the beginning of Star Wars, right? So I took this photograph and said, this is not what I want from your photographs, okay? So a long time ago in a classroom far, far away. So these are little things that I learned when I started teaching online, that we have to make it clear that our, yes, so Ludmilla has just said upside down photos. Exactly, yeah. Sometimes you get photos, you receive them on your computer and you're trying to get them the right way back. So yeah, try and encourage your students to get to do this. Obviously, these are simple, good habits. Once we remind our students, they usually remember to do this, but we need to remind them. So how can we overcome these problems? At the moment, we're being a little bit negative. We're thinking about all of the problems. And so what I want to do is now to look at how we can overcome the obstacles. By the way, I think you're going to get some sort of handout with the slides on, so you'll be able to look at this again when you want to look at it for more reference. How can we overcome the obstacles to writing in the English language classroom? Well, I mentioned before that writing is often a solitary activity, and I think that doesn't have to be that way. I think that we can encourage students to work together to write. I think we can have pair work writing. I think we can have small group writing. We can even have whole class writing activities. I think the important thing is to get our students to work together to help each other at different stages of the writing process, because many of the fears that our students have come from the fact that they are working on their own. So we're going to see some activities. The second half of this section will be some practical activities where I show you what I mean. But yeah, we can have pair work writing activities, not just speaking activities, but writing can be in pairs too. Also, writing always seems very serious, doesn't it? And we said that students often think they aren't creative, but I'm going to show you a few games where the students play at writing. We tend to think of warmers always being just speaking, but I think we can have writing warmers too. And there are different ways that we can encourage our students to be creative and get them to want to write and to enjoy writing, which I think is really important. Also, I think what we need to do is give opportunities for our students to check their writing. And, you know, I actually do this a lot. I say to my students, because they know that I write books, and I ask them, do they think that when I write my books, I write it perfectly the first time? And of course I don't. When I write a book, I do a draft, I edit it, I check it again, I edit it again, and then I produce my final version. And you can tell your students the same, okay? You can say that Dave, the person who writes these books, he never gets it right the first time. I think students think that writing, they do it once and it will be perfect. And we need to get them used to the idea. I always say to my students that writing has two parts: doing the first version and doing a second version. And the first version is never right. The first version will be what it is, but the second version, checking your work, is as important as writing your first version, particularly, I think, in exams. Also, I think that we need to encourage our students to look after the presentation, to look after their handwriting. In my experience, some of the most creative students are the ones who have terrible handwriting because they're very spontaneous. They're full of ideas, they're full of energy, but we need to make sure also that they do actually practice getting good handwriting. This is also connected with this idea of doing a second version, of doing a rough version and then a second draft. You know, there's been many experiments in universities where the same essay was written in good handwriting, medium handwriting, and very bad handwriting, and exactly the same content gets a higher mark when the writing and presentation is good. And I think that's just human nature, right? As a teacher, I immediately feel happy when I see a piece of work that looks nice, okay? Human nature, when it looks good, I'm already thinking that, yes, this person has written a good essay. So I think we need to encourage our students to do that. Also, and I've mentioned this already, and you mentioned this in the chat box, we need to get our students reading more. Okay, the more they read, the better they will write. And as I've already mentioned, in Gateway 2nd edition, there are lots of life skills sections in each level where we're encouraging students to read for pleasure. The more you read, the more you learn, and the better your control of grammar, the better your control of vocabulary, and the better also you will write. So for me, reading is the origin really of the writing skill. We're going to look, as I said before, we're going to look at how we can correct written work constructively. And that I think is really key also, learning from our mistakes. Particularly when we're looking at online, I really do believe that the way to keep students motivated online is by really encouraging them, by praising them for what they're doing. And whatever the writing is, however good or bad it is, as soon as my students send me a piece of written work, then I do immediately thank them. I say, thank you for sending me this. I think that we really need to encourage them. When a student is working on their own because of confinement, I think it's a pretty sad situation for our teenage students. It's sad for us, but it's sad for them. So everything they do, however good or however bad, the important thing is to keep them in the loop, to keep them in the process of learning and in the process of trying. Every time they try to write, they will be getting better. The worst thing is if they switch off. And you've already mentioned this. I think we need to make sure that our students have ideas to write about. So there's no good having the English grammar and English vocabulary if they don't have ideas. And we need to help them to have ideas. Somebody mentioned thinking skills. We need to encourage them to think of ideas to put in their essays. Without the content, there's nothing to write, okay? So writing is a question of a balance between the language, in this case English, and the ideas. Both of them are equally important at the end of the day. Also, and somebody's just mentioned this, Olena has just mentioned exactly what I was speaking about right now on the next sentence. Guide students with structured tasks and model texts. So Olena has just said exactly the same. Teach them the layout. If we don't give them an idea about how many paragraphs, how to structure the paragraphs, how to create the text, then they're not going to be able to do it. So exactly as Olena has just said there, we need to teach them the layout, teach them the structure, and give them model texts. We also need to teach them micro skills that, I've just mentioned paragraphs. I find this really interesting. When sometimes I read my students writing in Spanish, I realize that they're not actually very good at writing paragraphs in Spanish. And I just assume that teenagers know how to write paragraphs in their own language. But I think it's really interesting and really useful that in English, we teach them these strategies, because these strategies are not just about English. They're also, in this case, about English and writing in Ukrainian. Like, they need to know these strategies for writing in general, not just one language, but in both of their languages or in all of their languages. And, we've mentioned this, somebody mentioned this before. Again, we can't expect them to write a good essay or a good story if they haven't got the necessary grammar, if they haven't got the necessary vocabulary, and they haven't got the necessary linkers. So we need to make sure that they have all of those things. Right now, I've been the first half of my talk has been very much sort of the background about what is important to consider with writing. And now I'm going to show you some activities, some games, okay? So we often think that writing is all very serious, but we can often play games when we write too. This activity is perfect in a classroom. It's also perfect to do in a chat box. Your students could also do this in breakout rooms, working together, helping each other. And this is just a nice warmer for you. So in your next lesson, next week or whenever, try this as a warmer. I call it the alphabet story warmer, and it's very simple. You tell the students they've got to write as quickly as possible. For example, 5 minutes maximum, they have to write a story. Okay, so their story should be in the past. It can be the past continuous, the past perfect, but even if they just have the past simple, that will be enough. The only restriction on my story is that they have to use every single letter of the alphabet. Okay, so their story needs to include every letter of the alphabet. Now, that's very simple. What I often find, what is really interesting, is when we restrict people's imagination, they become more imaginative, because here we have to think of difficult letters. Can you put in the chat box, what letters do you think are the most difficult letters to include in English? Which are the least frequent? Q, somebody said. X. J, maybe. Q. Y, Q, yeah, Q, Z, X, Y, yeah, those are definitely, Z, yeah, those are definitely, I would say, the most difficult letters. Now, I would do this activity exactly the same with my class. The first question I would get them to think about is, what are the least frequent letters in English? And my students usually say the same as you, Q, Z, X, Z, Y. Now, again, in the chat box, could you please write down any words that you can think of in English that include those strange letters like Q and Z and Y and X? Can you think of any words that include those letters? 0, perfect. Queen, perfect. Quinch, Queen, X-ray, question, quiz. Quiz is nice, isn't it? Zoo, zebra. Q, that's a great word. Zip. Right, okay. Now, this is exactly what I do with my students, okay? I get them to brainstorm. First of all, you remember, I asked you to brainstorm complicated letters. Then I asked you to brainstorm complicated words. And then what I do is I give my students 3, 4, 5 minutes to think of a story which includes all of the letters in English. And of course, now they already have some ideas, because maybe we've got zebra, maybe we've got zigzag, maybe we've got zoo, we've got yacht. So, you know, in my head, I'm already thinking of a story. Somebody mentioned a queen. So maybe it could be the queen went by yacht to visit her zoo, and she saw her zebra. And I've already got some sort of story in my head. So I hope this idea is clear. It's a written warmer. The students are writing it down, and it's fun. It's fun. It's a mini story, and it leads to some very strange stories. Would you like to see a story that my student created? It was about a year ago, I think. I'm going to show you their funny story, okay? I think you'll like it. One day I woke up and saw a sexy zebra in my flower garden. It was quietly enjoying the view close to the swimming pool. Okay, so I think that's a lovely story. Okay, we've got just 2 sentences. We've got some like amazing ideas, and they came up with this in, I would say, 3, 4, 5 minutes. As I said before, we can do this in the chat box. Okay, so why not? Also, what you'll discover is that we'll all have completely different stories, because I can see there that somebody's come up with the name of Yo-Yo. The word yo-yo, we've got xylophone. So each different group or pair's story will be completely different. We've got a great chance here to exchange stories, to compare stories. The students can laugh at each other's stories. And what we've done is we've inspired creativity by restricting their imagination, which is really, it's a paradoxical idea, right? That the more you restrict people's possibilities, the more creative they become, because we've given them some sort of structure. So try this with your students. One thing, of course, your students might not write a perfect story. Okay, but if you remember that I've already explained that for me, writing is 2 different parts. It's doing a first draft and a second draft. So what we can do when our students have made lots of mistakes, but they've created these imaginative stories, why not then simply get them to look back? We've played the game, and then you say, okay, what I want you to do, because you wrote this very quickly, You've probably made some mistakes with the grammar, with spelling. What I want you to do is sit 5 minutes again, check your writing, and can you make it better? Can you detect any mistakes? So we're doing two things. First, we're playing the game, which is sort of wild brainstorming, although remember, we structured it by giving them some ideas also. And then we move from that wild brainstorming to this idea of checking and doing a second draft. Okay, so that's my first activity, my alphabet story. Okay, now a similar idea, which you can do in the classroom, or you can do also in a chat box. And I did this in a chat box at the beginning of confinement over a year ago. Random words, okay? Random words, random stories. So in my classes, I always have like a list of all of the words that I've taught them this year. And what I do is I suddenly choose 8 random words. For example, this is at a high level. You can do this at any level. The difference will be that obviously the students at lower levels will write much simpler stories with simpler vocabulary. But what I've got is these 8 different words or expressions, which I taught them. You might recognize some of these because they're from Gateway B2+. If any of you teach that level, you might remember the word rocket. We teach also expressions like as quick as a flash. And also home truths. So these words, so remember, this is high level, B2+. The principle is the same for A2, B2, B1, whatever level. You simply choose 8 random words that you've taught them so far this year to revise those words. And then you ask the students to come up with any crazy story that could include those 8 different words or expressions. Okay, I'll try and come back to that question afterwards. Okay, about, can you remind me afterwards, Alexandra? Yeah, I think if I'm trying to write my control of Cyrillic script is not always amazing, but I think it's Alexandra. If I forget, can you remind me to answer your question later, Alexandra? We've got these 8 random words or expressions, and we get them then to create some sort of story. Now, this is a real life example from one of my B2+ students. It's quite a long story, and they did this in 5 minutes. They did this, and it's just amazing. It still amazes me that a student could come up with this story. It's all about toilet paper, because I'm sure the same thing happened in Ukraine. When confinement began in Spain, suddenly there was no toilet paper. The most important thing in life was having enough toilet paper. And this student wrote this story, which I will remember forever and ever, because it reflected, you know, what was happening in the world a year ago. And they wrote this great story. I'm not going to read it out. And if you don't have time to read it all now, don't worry. It's just an example, okay? So they came up with this brilliant story, which just left me completely, you know, I just didn't know what to say because it was so good. One thing, it was so good, but you'll see that there are mistakes in the story, okay? They even write toilet paper incorrectly. And there are other mistakes that I'm sure you can see. Again, because this was done very quickly. So I just want to make the point. Writing should always be like 2 parts. And I've said this twice already, but I'm going to say it again. Really important. Writing has 2 parts. The brainstorming and the first draft, which is what I do when I write my books. And then the second part, which is correcting it, checking it, making it better. At the moment, this is at stage 1. It's not at stage 2. But what I did with this story was I just sort of explained to the student, you know, this is amazing. This is brilliant. It's just so full of great ideas. There are 1 or 2 mistakes. Have a look at it again, carefully, slowly, and just see if you can spot any mistakes. Of course, some of the mistakes that happened just happened because it was written so quickly. Okay, so that's okay. We have to get students used to the idea that they can make mistakes when they're writing. That is not a problem. Making a mistake when you're writing is not a problem. The important thing is to be able to check it and correct it afterwards. So anyway, my activity is 8 random words, create any crazy story, okay? And the sillier, the better, okay? It is a great story, isn't it? I just love it. I will remember that as long as I live. Another little activity, which is really great because it's very, very controlled, is what I call opposites dictation. And I love this activity because it's extremely controlled, but at the same time, it's open to creativity. So we're giving students support, we're giving students structure, we're giving students confidence, but we're also letting them come up with their own ideas. Let's try this, okay? I'm going to do this much faster than I would do with my students. So I've got to make it clear, because your English is very good and your teachers, I'm doing it fast, but in my classroom, I would go much slower. Opposites dictation means that I dictate sentences to you and you write the opposite. But the opposite is whatever you want the opposite to be. So for example, if I say to you, I don't know, man, the opposite could be woman, or the opposite could be boy, or the opposite could be animal. Okay, so very, very clear. You need to make it clear to your students. The opposite is very relative. There's no right or wrong answer. You can write what you think is the opposite. Okay, so if you've got a piece of paper, better not to do this in the chat box, okay? But if you've got a piece of paper, I'm going to do a very short dictation, and I want you to write the opposite of what I say. Okay, so not in the chat box at the moment, but just on a piece of paper. Okay, I'm going to begin, and if some of you can have a go, that would be great. I'm going to begin. Okay, there was an old woman. There was an old woman who lived in a beautiful old house. Full stop. I'm going to repeat, okay? There was an old woman who lived in a beautiful old house. Full stop. She loved playing chess. Okay? She loved playing chess and drinking tea. Full stop. Now, my story could continue. I'll read that again. There was an old woman who lived in a beautiful old house, full stop. She loved playing chess and drinking tea, full stop. Now, I've already got Irina has written in an idea there. So there was a young princess who lived in a nasty new villa. That's nice. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, does anybody else would anybody else like to type in? For example, the second sentence, she loved playing chess. What did anybody have? Oh, that's nice. There was a young woman who lived in an ugly new house. She didn't love playing chess and drinking tea. That's perfect. Yeah, Helen, thank you. She hated playing football. That's great. Right now, what is great about this? Yes, an ugly modern block of flats. She detested playing tennis. This is great. Now, if you've realized, the beginning of this story is the same for everybody. It's very, very controlled. And we've got all of these completely different sentences coming. And that's great. So we're all learning to write a story. You're not worrying too much about the creativity because you're simply responding to my dictation, okay? And that's really nice. It means that in the end, we're all writing stories in the past. We're all writing stories with the same structure, but we're all writing completely unique stories. And this gives the students possibilities of communication, sharing their stories, comparing their stories. And what you can do afterwards, which is really nice, and I want to see in the chat box if anybody can do this, what I do at the end of the activity is I see if my students can go back to my original sentences. So could anybody type in the chat box, what exactly did I dictate? Can anybody remember exactly what was my dictation? No. In a word, Irina says no. There was an old lady, exactly. There was an old lady. All right, so it wasn't that, there was an old lady who lived in a beautiful old house, is correct. And she, yeah, and then the second part was she loved playing chess and drinking tea. So I keep on saying we're doing this very quickly in the classroom. This could take you 20 minutes, maybe more. We've got very controlled writing with lots of creativity, lots of fun, and then we come back to my original dictation. Okay. So loads of practice. Actually, I also think one day maybe I should give a seminar, a webinar about dictation, because I think that actually dictations are very useful too, because students are actively listening, they're actively writing, and it's also testing grammar, vocabulary, spelling, okay? So yeah, dictations are a great idea. I've got an example of the same activity. We could do this with this text, and maybe this text looks familiar to you because this is, so every summer could become every winter, 15-year-old could become 50-year-old, goes to school could be, we could change it to the past, went to university. This text is from Gateway 2nd edition A2. Yeah, maybe you remember this text if you teach Gateway A2, but a simple activity there. Okay, so one other simple thing to do. Another favorite activity of mine for low-level students, and particularly maybe for younger students, this is great for A1 plus, A2, when students are seeing the past simple. This is called the Mad Lib Story, and I'm sure you've seen this or done something similar. We won't have time to do it. I'll just explain it to you. The first thing you do is you get your students to write down, for example, number 1, a country, so they could write Spain. Number 2, a boy's name, famous, fictional, unusual, so it could be, I don't know, Donald Trump. Number 3, a girl's name, maybe it could be Lady Gaga. Number 4, a city, maybe it could be Kiev. Number 5 could be a verb in the past simple, so it could be, for example, kicked. But if I have kicked, I need an object, so we could say kicked a football, for example. Yeah. Number 6, an animal. Number 7, a superhero. Number 8, a place, like a building, like the post office, school, university, swimming pool. Number 9, a type of food. Yeah, I'm thinking of some nice Ukraine food like borscht. I don't know why I'm thinking of borscht now. Pierogi and things. And number 10, a number, so it could be like 1,000. So this is very easy, right? Any student at any level can do this. This is extremely simple. Now, what you do, once the students have written those down on a piece of paper, you give them this structure, Vereniki. Yeah, okay, that sounds nice. I remember that. I have had that. Now, you remember, I said, for example, for number 1, Spain. Okay, so this story took place in Spain. It all began when, and I said Donald Trump, okay, met, and I said number 3, Lady Gaga. They decided to go to, I said Kiev, didn't I? Yeah, so they decided to go to Kiev. Lots of things happened there. First, they kicked a football, okay? Then they saw a big, so I'm sure you've played this. I don't know if this game exists in Ukraine, but it's like a typical little game that people play in the UK and in the US. So it's called a Mad Lib Story. It's fun, right? Because again, we've given a very clear structure, very simple, clear structure that it's impossible to get wrong, really. And then what happens is each student has got their own, they've got their own completely different story. I'm going to show you the previous slide. Somebody's asked me, okay? Yeah, so again, very easy, okay? A1 plus A2. As soon as students have started to learn the past simple, this is perfect, okay? They write these things. Remember, you're going to get a copy of the slides on a PDF at the end of the session, or very soon when you receive your certificate, maybe. We've got that slide. We've got this slide. They create the story. Now, I've got a question for you. How are the events in the story so clear? What makes the events, what makes the sequence event clear? Are there any words that help you to know what happened first and second? Can anybody, linkers, yeah. Can you give me examples of linkers in my story? Any particular examples there? In the end, first, then. Exactly. Okay, so what I do with my students is I show them the next slide, which makes it really clear. Look at this. It all began when? First, then, just at that moment, in the end. So we're getting them to see clearly how these sequences work, and they really help us to understand the sequence of events. And then what we do is we simply give them, okay? They can create their own story now. So we've helped them by giving them lots of support at the beginning, and then afterwards the students can create their own story. So what we're doing is we're giving a very simple introduction to the idea of linkers of sequence. Okay, so another activity for you. Again, remember, you'll be able to see this on your handout. Okay. Right now, I need to move on a little bit. One thing is true. I'm showing you some fun games particularly for lower levels. The next question is, what about exams? Now, this is the exam that I prepare my Spanish students for every year. I prepare students every year for their school leaving, their university entrance exam. If you look at question number 5, we've got a serious topic. What should local authorities do to improve transport and mobility in large cities? Now, when I gave this essay to my students, they were all angry because they said, how should I know? How do I know what the local authorities should do to improve transport and mobility? In most cities, the local authorities have no idea either. So how can we ask a 17-year-old teenage student to think of ideas? And this made me think that in general, in exams, this is another example of an exam. This is from Italy, where students have to write, if you look at number 3, if you look at number 5, these essays are pretty difficult, not just because of the English, but because students don't have ideas for these things. And that got me thinking about the need. I'm going to show you, this is the English translation. The need to help students to generate ideas, okay? You know, how can they think of ideas to do this? Because 1 out of 3 marks is all about the ideas. It says they're interesting ideas, personal point of view, original opinions. There's lots of these different things that they need to include. So this is just one little idea to help students to think of ways of encouraging students to generate ideas, okay? It's called 5 Whys. The idea is that you keep on asking the question why, okay? So this is to generate different ideas. Why is the traffic so bad in big cities? Okay, so the answer could be that because there are so many people driving cars nowadays. So my next question to my students is, why are there so many people driving cars nowadays? And the answer could be because people don't like using public transport. So my next question is, why don't people like using public transport? And then the answer would be, whatever you want to put the answer. Sorry, I'm going to go back. The answer would be, well, for example, because public transport isn't very frequent, or public transport isn't very safe. And so basically what the idea of this activity is to go through and to give it very structured to generate lots of different ideas, okay? So the idea would be that we're simply generating more and more ideas. Okay, before I finish, I'm just going to look at one last slide, which is thinking about correcting. Okay, so correcting, I hope you can see this, correcting written work. These are lots of questions for you to think about. Okay, these are things. I'm just wondering if everybody can see me still. Can you all see me? Can you see my slides? Yes, no? Okay, good. This is going to be my last slide then. Just these are some things to think about when we are correcting writing. Okay, so for example, do you underline mistakes or do you cross them out? And why do you do that? For example, I personally think that underlining is better than crossing out because I think that crossing out is very aggressive. Do you write the correction yourself or do you prompt self-correction? I think here the idea would be that I prefer to prompt self-correction if I think my students should know the answer. If they don't know the answer because they've never seen this point of grammar or vocabulary, then I would write the correction myself. Do you use a correction code, for example, SP for spelling or T for tense? Why not? I think it's a good idea because it gets the students to think about their mistakes. But of course, you have to make sure that the students actually understand your correction code, because I think that many teachers, we use different codes and different symbols and different letters. So we need to check that everybody uses the same. Also then, do you evaluate, your students do anything with your corrections? If so, what and why? And if not, why not? And again, I think this is really important. I think that students learn more from their mistakes than from other things. So I always make sure that I get my students to actually write down their mistakes and to make a note of them. And then the next thing, do you evaluate content as well as language? So I think it's really important to get students to also to get them to realize that we're not just looking at grammar. I think Alexandra's question was linked with this, I think, that it's not just grammar, okay? So we've got two different things. We've got grammar and content, and I think that we need to make sure that we pay attention to both of those. And then also things like handwriting, presentation, which I mentioned before. I mentioned also, writing a general comment, I think, is really important. So it's not just a question of giving a mark. I would give a comment about that people have made progress, that your writing is interesting, that you're making progress, that I didn't understand this idea, but I understood the other idea, making sure that we're being positive and encouraging. And peer correction, I think, can often work really well as well to get students to compare their work, and also then to think about also what color pen you're using when you're correcting. So does it make any difference what color? I actually do use red because I think it's very clear, but I know that people use different things. And in fact, I'm going to show you in a second. I'm sure some of you already are following the Gateway Facebook page, but some time ago we had a really interesting debate about what color is the best and why. And if you want to look at the Gateway Facebook page, please do, because there are lots and lots of comments, lots of interesting ideas that teachers have shared. Okay, I'm conscious that time is running out. I just wanted to show you some photographic proof if you've ever seen me in Ukraine, but here are a few photos just to show you that I have actually been in your wonderful country. This was a time when I was in Kiev. I think this was my first trip, which was a long time ago now. This, I think, was in Kharkiv. And somebody gave me this wonderful calendar for Ukraine. So yeah, I've been to your wonderful country 3 times together. I hope that one day I will get back there. If you're not already following the my Facebook page, then please do join me. We haven't really got time for questions or many questions today, but if you do have any questions, you can always contact me directly at the Facebook page there, Teach with Dave. Also, just to encourage you, if you feel like joining me, I'm going to be doing 3 free sessions called Teach with Dave, looking at teaching teenagers. And it would be great if you could join me. You can see there the address. It would be really lovely if you came. And as I say, it's all completely free, but some different ideas for you as teachers of teenagers. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the thanks. Inna, I don't know if you would, if anybody does have any questions. It's quite difficult, and also I'm conscious of the time.
Dave, I'm absolutely sure if we have the whole day with you, teachers will still have questions to ask you, because you really have to what to share with. You are, as always, full of very creative, very practical ideas. I'm sure that your teenage students are happy to have you as their teacher. Together with you, I encourage you, dear colleagues, to register and join this series of Teach with Dave Masterclass events. In the letter, which I will write you after the webinar, I will put the direct link for registration. And Dave, let's hope for the best, that this pandemic and lockdown finishes very soon, and you really come to Ukraine to meet the teachers who really love you.
That would be great. That would be ideal. Let's hope that that day comes back soon, right? I mean, there's so many problems, but hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, I always remain optimistic that maybe one day I'll be able to get there.
Thank you very much, and see you online and offline.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Bye, everybody. Goodbye.
And now, dear colleagues, we are moving on with our next speaker. I have a great pleasure. Hello, Jacek. I have a great pleasure to introduce you our next speaker, Jacek Lagun, who is also a teacher and many other things. And also he is known as the co-author of Get to 100 New Edition course book, Book 1 and Book 2. Particularly, he wrote those parts related to Ukraine. And again, continuing the topic of coming to Ukraine and the end of lockdowns and pandemia, we do hope that this finishes, the borders will be open, and we will have the opportunity to meet you here in Ukraine. Jacek, the floor is yours, and you are going to do something really amazing, and a small teaser before you start. I do know that you prepared a surprise for the participants. A small surprise, so we're looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you. When talking about this lockdown and pandemic, I was about to visit Ukraine. I even had the tickets. I was just kind of waiting for the plane. It was 2 weeks too late. So hopefully soon I'm going to meet you all. So hello everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful afternoon, and I hope you've learned lots of wonderful things, and I hope I can share some useful stuff with you today. So let's take a look. Let's begin like the 3 unwise monkeys on developing listening skills. I suppose we all know the 3 unwise monkeys, right? Just when they hear no evil, see no evil, and they speak no evil, and this way they basically feel happier. And oh, hello from so many beautiful places. Okay, so the thing is that if you think about that, listening is not only about what you hear, as the first monkey is kind of sitting, but it's also about what you see. I mean, when you read something, or when you see, I mean understand. And normally in life, when we listen, we usually speak. We make comments, we answer some questions. Unless this is like a webinar like today, when I only talk, and basically you do make comments. You write to me. So basically the idea is like listening is more than just listening. And another thing to do with listening is well, it's a slightly stressful, especially listening in a foreign language, slightly stressful activity. But when looking at wise or unwise monkeys who don't want to hear, who don't want to see, and who don't want to say anything, I have a feeling that basically, here in Poland, we have students who are kind of like those monkeys, like you can see here in the picture. Basically they have their own world that they look at. They have their own music that they listen to, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to listen to anything else. And basically, when they open the mouth, it's sometimes only because they're chewing gum or they want to eat something. So I don't know. Is that the same for you? Do you have the same experience in your in your country with students? If it's a yes, can you just write yes, why, in the comment? That, yeah, all right. Students who, well, I can't see, I can't hear, is like, teacher, and my camera is off, so I can't really talk to you online. I don't know if you have classes online in your country, but in my country, we've been like teaching online for the last like half a year. So so basically what we all know is like, I'm blind, I'm not even there. Right, so these are the monkeys, but I can understand those students who are slightly stressed, who don't want to, because listening is a kind of activity where you have to combine lots of different things, and this is why it can be difficult for them to listen. And we are afraid that they're going to fail, and basically they kind of sometimes even refuse to start. But before I start, I'd like to go over a few rules here. So here's the judge, and the judges give us rules, and the rules for today's meeting are, well, let's take a look and let's discuss. Well, the rules are, first of all, please be active, just like you want to right now. I'm looking at this window with your comments. I'm really, really happy that you keep talking to me, and react to jokes. You probably know that because you're teachers. People say teachers have no feelings. Teachers are like tough people who don't. But whenever we make a joke, we want our students to laugh. At least politely. So if I make a joke, I will try to inform you, because not all my jokes are good. So when you see that, can you please react with a smiley? Oh, with a smiley, like right now, somebody. Okay, thank you very much. This is the kind of reaction I want from you whenever I make a joke. So today, my idea is to talk about those monkeys, those three monkeys, and we'll be talking how we can make them see, how we can make them hear, and how we can make them speak. Because as I said, listening should lead to reading. Well, maybe you should begin. Отже, зараз ми можемо розпочати наш вебинар. Як ви знаєте, сегодня мы будем говорить про уміння аудіювання та про те, що ми як вчителі можемо зробити, щоб допомогти нашим учням покращити це уміння сприймання на слух. Now, first of all, I'm sorry. Okay? Yeah, but you're very polite. Yeah, I know what that was. Well, thank you. Okay, that was the surprise. Okay, I probably should have warned you a little bit. Second of all, Ina, thank you very much for helping me with that. Third of all, when I started, thank you. It's not my Ukrainian. It was Ina's help. But when I started speaking Ukrainian to you, did you immediately understand what I was saying? I suppose some of you were like, what? I mean, he's saying something. It's not English. Oh, it's my language, right? Because obviously my pronunciation was really bad. But what I'm trying to show you is that if you're not prepared, you can be surprised by your own language. This is what happens when you're abroad and suddenly you hear people speaking your language. At first you're like, I think I know it. They're people from my country, right? So basically this is how we feel. So, one of the biggest things is like getting ready your students for listening, making them see what's coming, so that they get better at what they are supposed to do. And today, I'll be talking to you, giving you examples from, Get to 100 book that I co-wrote, co-authored, and I had the great privilege and pleasure to write about Ukraine in this book. So I'll be giving you examples from exercises I actually wrote, and and they are kind of created the way I believe good listening should go. So the first thing, our students getting ready for the class, and being hearing. And just getting ready and thinking, okay, what can I do? How can I be better? Well, the first thing is we need to help our students switch from the mother tongue, because the mother tongue is in their heads, and this is something that's like it's everywhere, and this is the way they think, and we have to prepare them for what's coming. And to do that, we need to use some very important psychological phenomenon, which is called priming. Priming, simply put, is the way our brain works. That, you know, if you are kind of surrounded by lots of things around you, and if you have like lots of things about one topic, you start in a way thinking about that more. You're prepared to think about that. Just to give you two examples from some psychological experiments created or conducted a few years ago, just to show how the brain works. So the first thing is, you know, the first experiment was, you know, people were put in a room with lots of green color around them, and then after some time in this room, they were asked. They were asked to go to another room, and in the room they had some fruit to choose, and they would say, like, well, if you'd like to eat something, it's okay, you know, take it. And you know, scientists observed what the choices would be, and they noticed that people who were sitting in a yellow room tended to choose bananas because they were yellow, rather than apples and a few other kinds of fruit which were of different color. Which basically shows that when you kind of in a certain surrounding, you kind of set your brain like a railway, making you go in one direction, which means that, you know, certainly you will make certain choices, and you're prepared to make certain choices. Another very interesting experiment conducted a few years ago was a group of young people. Two groups of young people were put together in separate rooms, and these people were asked to create lists or generate like lists of words. And one group was asked to create vocabulary to do with being old, and the other group was asked to create a list of words and expression to do with being young. They were all young people, but they were kind of creating two different lists. And after that, the people were asked to move to a different location. And to get to this location, to another room, they had to walk along a very long corridor. And while they were walking, scientists measured the time. And the interesting thing was that people who thought about vocabulary to do with being old, well, they walked remarkably or markedly longer. The thing is that people who talked about, you know, like being slow, being kind of, you know, having problems with you, with joints and everything, when they were walking slower. The people who talked about being young, energetic, they walked much quicker. These two examples show us that we can prime our brains to focus on something and to operate in a certain way. So using this phenomenon, you can get your students ready for what's coming in the class and what's coming in the listening. And you can prepare them to hear better the things they're going to hear in your class a little bit later. Now, I'd like you to do something for me. You know, I learned a little bit of Ukrainian for you, so can you please close your eyes? I promise I'm not in the same room where you are, so I can't do anything to you. It's not a magic trick. I just want you to close your eyes for a moment, and I'm going to read several things I would like you to imagine. Because, you know, today's topic for our class on listening is food. I hope your eyes are closed. Oh, I can see there is one lady in Kiev who hasn't closed her eyes. Please do it. Yes, I'm talking to you now. And now, right. Listen and just imagine the answers. You're walking into your kitchen during dinner time. What can you smell? Don't write the answers yet. Soup or meat or vegetables? Okay, still your eyes closed. Do you know English names of the food that's being cooked? And now you're still in the kitchen, you know, dinner time. What can you hear? All right, you can open your eyes. Now, I hope you're hungry, because I am. So you feel the same way as I do. So if you have classes online right now, you don't even have to ask your students to, this is like more or less dinner time. You don't have to ask your students to imagine. You can tell them, close your eyes and can you smell the actual smells from your kitchen? Okay. By the way, unless they've had COVID, I unfortunately had this experience of having COVID, and right now I can't really smell anything. So it wouldn't work with me, but I hope it will work with your students. Okay. So when you think about that, you can get your students to get like into this mood of thinking about food, about eating. Oh yes, meat, lovely. Now, this is more or less dinner time in my home, and I don't know about your home. So when talking about food, getting ready for this listening class, can you please write now in the chat box, what is for dinner in your homes today? Because in my home, I made some chili con carne for me and my, okay, akroshka. Okay, sounds interesting. Fish and veggies, very healthy. Borscht, yeah, it's the best. I mean, I don't know if you know that, but in Poland we have something which is called Ukrainian borscht, which is like full of lots of stuff. It's like very good. It's one of my favorite soups. Soup and salad. Okay, good. So coffee at school, that's not the healthiest dinner ever, I suppose. Okay, so as you can see here, which is like kind of getting ready to think about food. So this is how you can start your class. There's a mode of self-reflection, asking your students to close their eyes and think about that. What we're doing is like getting them in the mood to listen and later to talk about food. Okay, so then you take a look at something like that, and you know what? I believe that whenever you're with your students, it's good to have fun with them. One of those teacher trainers, once said that enjoy your classes. I really love this this creed. It says enjoy your classes. If you don't, who will? And I think it's always fun to have fun in your class. It's always fun to talk to your students with some kind of challenges and getting them involved. So you can ask your students by showing them just this exercise without anything else. Oh, nothing. I'm at school. I'm sorry, Svetlana. Right. So the thing is, you show them that, and you say, okay, you know what? We're going to have a class on food. These are some names of different kinds of food, and in a moment you're going to open your books and you're going to look for these. Which 4 do you think you're going to find? In the book. So again, as you can see, we're just kind of getting like students into the mood of thinking, imagining stuff, right? So by the way, people, those of you who have worked, try to remember with Get to 100. If you haven't worked, you should start working with Get to 100. But if you haven't worked, think about that and think which 4 pictures, without cheating, no cheating. I know it's an online class and it's very easy to cheat, but don't look into the book. So which 4 of these I'm going to show in a moment. Go ahead, write in the chat box. Okay, so is it going to be borscht, or maybe holodiec, or maybe chicken tikka masala? Fish and chips. Just go ahead. I'm waiting for your suggestions. All right. Okay, and now see what's happening. You've written some ideas. You're kind of like you're waiting for the answers, right? So we're kind of focusing on the stuff. Just like introducing this like as a kind of challenge. What do you think? What do you think? Let's see who's right. This is how you get your students involved. And you don't have to prepare for that. It's a very simple and very, very nice trick. Okay, so let's take a look. The drum roll, boom. And here are the pictures. So you can take a look and you can see that, well, the pictures are eaten mass, I suppose. Number 2 is borscht. I love it. Then we have fish and chips and English breakfast, right? So see, I mean, we're still, before we get any listening, we get our students involved. By the way, when you have something like that, when you have those pictures, you can, again, very quickly with your students, you have like a vote of hands, but raising hands, you can say, okay, so which of these is the tastiest, right? What do you think? If you just pick a number, people. So, right, yeah, I know you're hungry. I'm hungry too. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which is the tastiest? Okay, 3, 2. All right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I mean, they're all great, but I think I'd go for number 2 as well. Here. All right. Now, see, Or you can ask your students to vote which is the healthiest or which is the least healthy. You can ask them, well, you can tell them, you know what, very quickly look at the full pictures and tell me, in the day when you like wake up and you eat different like dishes, in what order you think you'd eat them? Like, obviously this would be like 4, 2, 3, 1, right? Because first you have breakfast, then you have soup, then you have the second dish, and finally you have dessert. At least this is the way we do it in Poland. Okay, 22. I like this. Somebody likes borscht really, really much. So, okay, so that's basically the idea, right? So again, you play with your students, but the main point is working with the vocabulary and making the brains kind of start to thinking about food, start thinking about food in English terms, English words, because we're speaking English right now. So you can also ask them like which food would be best for a date, if you want to, if your students are old enough and they are not kind of if they're not like afraid to react to the word date, it's like sometimes students are like that. Okay, so this is the next thing you can do with these things. So basically we're priming them, we're getting them ready to listen to something, but it's not over. Once you talk about this food, you take a look at the pictures, you can still have a bit of a discussion, like let's make this monkey, I mean, in a positive way, like proverbial monkey, metaphorical monkey, talk. And, you have to choose true or false. A lot of Ukrainians eat borscht with sour cream. I think it's true. And this is the way my mom makes it. You get like borscht and then, she takes like a spoonful of sour cream and she puts it there. So that's the way we eat it at home. So you then discuss food, still getting ready for the listening, right? And, because, I like it when my students are active, and I don't like it when they kind of like sit passively waiting for what's going to happen next. So the next thing I would do that is like, okay, fine. So now, my dear students, can you please write a true or false sentence of your own? Okay. So you now add one more. The good thing is my students are active. My students have to use English, and at the same time they are getting ready for the listening task, because again, the main point right now is like getting them ready, getting them kind of focused on the topic of food. And if they have to write this in English, they have to start thinking in English a little bit. They will probably ask you about a word or two, so there's the thing. Then they will read those sentences to each other and they will decide if they are true or they are false. Okay, you're doing the task right now, good. So basically this is the idea, kind of like getting your students ready, having a class in English, working with English before you start the listening task itself. So this whole kind of sequence I showed you, from thinking about food and what food you have at home, to moving like that, just like thinking about the pictures, guessing what the pictures are going to be, thinking what order the food is eaten on that day. Apart from being fun, I mean, I hope you had fun answering my questions. Apart from the fact that you're really hungry right now, most of you. Now, basically, we got kind of ready for the listening. We kind of got prepared for what's coming, and now we can start talking. Unless your mouth is watering like mine, and then it's difficult to talk. And we can start listening. So the next point we have here is like kind of making our students not only see what's coming, but making them hear. And now, have you ever thought about how incredibly complex and how incredibly wonderful and I would say miraculous the idea of listening is? Because because if you think about that, think about the whole process. Somebody makes a sound. The sound travels to our ears. Our brain gets the sounds and puts those sounds together and creates words. Then matches the words and those sounds together to something that the brain already knows. And this is how the brain kind of understands, okay, so this is the word you said. But there's also grammar behind it that you have, okay, those words are put in a certain order. And, if you get them together, you will create like a sentence. And so far, I've described listening in your native language. When you listen in a foreign language, suddenly, apart from all those things I've just described, like matching sounds to what we have in our brain as a kind of pattern, we also have to think of the fact that you don't know all the words because it's a foreign language, you don't know all the grammar, you're kind of stressed, and you get half of it, maybe some of it, and you need to understand the idea. This is how complex listening is. And that's so far, we've got to listening. We haven't talked about examination listening, because examination listening, apart from all those things I've just mentioned, is one more thing. There's this person sitting on the other end of this exam, creating distractors. Those little things that are supposed to kind of mislead you and lead you to up the wrong path. If you think about that, examination listening is really crazy, and I understand why it's there. I understand why those tasks are created like that, but it's really crazy. Imagine listening to people who talk to you with distractors. I remember my mom talking to me. I remember my mom telling me, why don't you go to a shop and buy something? But I don't really remember my mom, putting distractors in the middle of our conversation, so that she could check whether, Jacek is listening carefully, right? Or, putting some distractors, why don't you buy this, and that, but don't buy this, unless, however, although, but, so, and now leaving me and now go to a shop and bring me what I wanted. Okay, it never happens in real life. It's just the other way around. My mom usually kind of grabbed my face and said, like, now go to the shop and buy 3 things. 3: milk, butter, bread. Okay, and I usually came back without butter, but still I got milk and bread. Okay, so I had a lot of walking because I had to go to get the butter anyway. So this is, what I'm trying to say is that your students, when they get to a task, to a listening task, they have to face something which is absolutely kind of scary, something that's kind of like, oh, too many things, and the brain really works very, very fast. So what we as teachers can do, well, we can't change the way listening functions. It's like, this is the way it is. But we can prepare our students with a bit of advice, teaching them, that, those tasks, those listening tasks, not natural, because people don't speak like with full correct sentences in everyday life, and not written the way they kind of like people talk every day, but still, these are the tasks that you have to kind of face. So you tell your students, what? Be careful, and you give them like some ideas, like, be careful whenever you have words like always or never or only. Why should you be careful? Well, because if you say it's always true or something always happens, and then suddenly you have a modal verb in the listening, well, modals mean not always, but generally or sometimes. Okay, so this is like getting our students prepared for what's coming, right? Helping them hear, helping them become like less scared and more prepared, more equipped with this. I have to tell you, I'm not a big fan of doing that. It's not like I'm really happy that, we have to teach this way. But I understand why it's important. I understand why it's something we have to do. I do prefer playing to my students some video that they like, or something interesting that's exciting, and then talking about that. But I know that they need this. And, the funny thing is, this is something that has been really important to me as a teacher and a teacher trainer and a person who teaches future teachers at university. That, what, we as teachers, when we walk into the classroom, we understand lots of things. We understand the distractors, we understand the listening, we understand how things function, but our students don't. And things which are really obvious to us are not to our students. So when we, in the recording, we hear the word like sentence, I always do this. I'm saying, okay, fine. So the answer is going to be sometimes or usually, or he has this like usual habit or something. We see it, but our students don't. And they need to be told that, and they need to be explained that explicitly and clearly. But it's not the only way to do it. Actually, I think, again, I believe that, it's a good thing when your students are active, and we're not that active all the time. First of all, we have to protect our throat. It's something that I'm sorry, I have to react here in a moment. Okay, we have to protect our throat. We have to learn how to use it. And the thing is that our students learn when they use something, when they do something. And, learning is much better facilitated when you are actively involved in doing, in performing a task. So, it's a good thing to have some kind of tricks. Not all of them, not all the tricks I'm going to show you in a moment, in one class, but from time to time to get your students involved in kind of analyzing those tasks and those tricks you have. For example, something as simple as that. You ask your students after the listening, say, fine, these are the answers, these are the correct answers. Now look at the script and find the distractors. You don't have to spend like a whole class, looking and kind of analyzing. Just like tell them, okay, find them. Find those words that are supposed to mislead you, because they are there on purpose, left on purpose, but people who are either listening. How do I know? I do because I write them, and I leave those distractors. Okay, so I know. This is what the thing is. Another thing you can try with the students, another idea you can try with the students is, for example, once you're done doing a true-false exercise, as is the case in this on this page, you can tell your student, okay, now write one more true-false question for the listening. And you know what? You can do that. It's like, now we'll listen it. You take all those true-false questions on pieces of paper, or your students send them to you, and you basically copy them very quickly and show them to your students, like in Zoom or MS Teams or whatever program or platform you're using. And you show them all those true-false questions and say, okay, now I'm going to play the recording the third time, and you check which questions are true, which questions are false, or decide before the listening. And if people like read and somebody says like, let's say a pair of students creates a sentence which is true and everybody says it's false, well, it's a wonderful moment when you can discuss it. It's like, okay, they thought it's true, you think it's false. Why? Explain. How does it work in the text? Because what, sometimes it's worth spending like 3 or 4 minutes talking about something, discussing, making your students understand ideas. It's more worth like those 3 minutes to spend on discussing that than like checking another ABCD exercise. Okay, because we want our students to be kind of actively involved in what's happening. Another idea is change the script. So you tell your students, now you have sentences from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 is true, 2 is false, whatever. Now look at the script and change it in such a way that true sentences become false sentences and false sentences become true. Okay, so in a way, you ask your students to become, authors. They write, they're listening. Oh, just let's say they tweak it a little bit, change it a little bit, but still, again, you look at those processes. You see that doesn't, and you put an s at the end, and suddenly it's the opposite. You see that wherever you have but, you take out but, you put and suddenly this is the meaning is the opposite. So your students work a little bit. By the way, you're just kind of walking around looking at what's happening, so you just have some time, to again, save your throat. But the idea is they have to do the analysis. And you will hear those like students saying like, no, it's stupid, it's not going to work, take a look, it means the same, right? And that's what we want our students to do. We want our students to be critical of the text that they're looking at. And all those tricks, which are not really that complicated, I have to tell you. The other day, I was talking to my friend because we're preparing some like listening examination listenings, and my friend said like something, oh my god, it's like it's always the same tricks, it's always despite, it's always may, it's always something. And it's true, these are always the same tricks. Once you learn them, it's much easier to deal with the task. Now this is like a bit of a game. You tell your students the following thing: you're going to listen to like an exercise, an examination exercise, but this time I don't want you to read all the options. So you read the question and not A, B, C, D answers, but I want you only to read option A. This is like one group of students. Another group of students, you only listen to option B. Another group of students, you only listen to option C. And then the last group of students, you only get option D. And when you discuss that, when you discuss these options, when you listen the first time, you only focus on your answer, if it's correct or if it's incorrect. And if it's incorrect, you write why. And if it's correct, you write a little comment why. So you don't care about A. When you're in A group, you don't care about B, C, and D. And you're in C group, you don't care about A, B, and D. This is what you only have to care about. And after the listening, you get those students together. So one student from group A, one student from group B, from group C, and from group D. You get them to sit together and discuss which answer do you think was correct in exercise number 1, and they keep talking, right? And if they all agree, just like student B said, I think B was correct. A, C, and D say, I think ours were incorrect. So they take a look, they discuss, right? This is what I heard, this is what I heard, and they will again actively analyze distractors. They will actively analyze, the text, and they will actively kind of discuss things. And again, it's not an exercise for half an hour. It's just, yes, it's a kind of station activity, yes. But there's something kind of helps your student get involved and analyze. If you tell your students something like that, now look at the text and analyze it, and then we're like, analyze, it's boring, I hate analyzing. But if you give them this kind of task and you ask them to talk about it, and then it's kind of like a game or a challenge, it works much better, I suppose. Okay. And follow the leader. Follow the leader is another thing which I really, really like. You again ask like a few students. Okay, let's imagine you're doing with your students something like 4 different listening tasks, like examination tasks in one class. I have to move my hand to for you so you can see it. All right, so you have 4 different tasks. Let's say. So you tell the students, you divide them into 4 different groups, and you tell them. Group 1, you take a look at the script for task 1. Group 2, you take a look at the script for task 2, and 3 and 4. And then you say, now you work with the script and find where the correct answer is, circle it, and where the distractors are, and then maybe underline it. Okay. And then you put those people, let's say for task 1, who have just looked at the script. You put them in 4 different parts of the room, and then you say, okay, now we listen. And you, the leaders, group 1 leaders, whenever the information for the correct answer appears on the listening, put your right hand up, or put your hand like open hand up. And whenever there's a distractor, put your fist up. Okay? So the rest of the class, they're doing the task, and you tell them, if you're not sure, if you don't know what to do, look at the leaders. Okay, and or if you kind of feel lazy, look at the leaders. But the point is, again, you're kind of listening, and okay, and you see, that's a distractor. The thing is, we wanted those leaders to analyze the text. We wanted the leaders to think about the text, how it's created. Okay, they don't have to know that. They can think that now we are the ones who kind of, tell our other students what to do. So after the first listening, you change. The ones from the second group basically take a look at the stuff, and they go to those different 4 parts of the room, and you play the second recording, so everybody gets involved and everybody gets active in 2 different ways. Okay, again, we want our students to do that from time to time, because we want them to analyze how things work in those recording tasks, so that they are prepared when the actual exam comes. Okay, and one more thing, this is like obvious step number 6. Sometimes you can ask your students to make their own listening tasks, and it's not that difficult. Either you ask them to get something on YouTube, and then you ask them just like, obviously, with especially teenage students, when you tell them to find something on YouTube, you tell them can't be too brutal, can't be swearing, there can't be any swear words and stuff like that, because if you don't do that, obviously what you're going to get, like lots of bad words and lots of kind of stuff happening there. But you can, they can write their own listening task, and they can record it. Now it's not that difficult to record something, right? We get a mobile phone. In my university practice, I teach phonetics and phonology, and my students send me recordings of them reading a text every week. It takes them like a few moments. So right now, why don't we use the technology? Students prepare like a dialogue, or they prepare a text. After they've worked with you on distractors and how texts are created, you tell them, okay, now you create a text, you record it, and then you, as the teacher, can use it in the class. You can get those recordings, you can get the questions, you can get like answers, A, B, C, D, or true, false, and you can use it in your class, and there's this added a bonus that, students basically, we know what they feel like generally when they have to listen about something which is like examination, like, okay, let's listen. But if you have to listen to something which your friends wrote and your friends recorded, you're more likely to listen. It's like, wow, let's see how they did. Okay, so this is the extra motivation for them to work. All right, now, so these were my ideas of like how you can make your students see, basically focusing, priming them, preparing them, and how you can make them hear, but not in this like regular sense, you know, that you help them like make their ears bigger or something. No, we're talking about like the sense of like helping them work with the dangerous elements in the recording that they have. You know, it's like those distractors. You know, teaching your students how a typical recording, examination recording works, because we've come up with, like, or as we discussed, it's not natural. Okay, basically exams, if we think about that, are not natural. You know, when you have to compare, for example, to pictures. I'm sorry, I'm not talking about listening. But has it ever happened to you that, you know, somebody gave you a phone with a photo and said, here are two pictures of me and my family in two different locations. Now you have 2 minutes to compare and contrast the pictures and answer one question. It never happens. It never happens. You know, we don't speak like that. So exams are unnatural. Exams are basically, well, something that you will never see in life. And yet we have to deal with that, and we have to teach our students how to do it. But yes, as I also said, you know, like I suppose at the beginning of the session, listening is just like one thing. But, you know, listening when it doesn't lead to speaking is in most situations a waste of time. Sorry, I just have to move my notes a little bit. Okay. It's just basically a waste of an opportunity, a waste of a chance, you know, a waste of something that you can do with the listening text. You know, when you have input, you know, you can make your students just talk about that, you know, discuss things. You know, remember, we've just like talked about food, we've just kind of thought about the smells, and we're all hungry, we're all kind of desperate, so why don't we talk about that, you know, so at least we can kind of get rid of the trauma of being hungry in the classroom. So that's the next thing that that should happen in your class with your students. Whenever you listen, you have to make them speak. You have to, well, help them speak. So it's not that difficult. First of all, you need to have something which is like, wrap it up. You can work in pairs and think of a food advertisement, both good and bad ones. I suppose even right now, when I ask you about that, you all have like some kind of yogurt in front of you, you know, imagining like this very tasty yogurt color, smooth going down, because it's basically food is on our heads right now. Discuss why they are boring or interesting. Think of something you could sell and promote on TV, right? So it's basically, let's not waste all the information that your students have. Let's not waste all the preparedness for discussion, all this kind of being happy to talk about food because, well, it's been the whole class about food. Let's not let it go to waste by not talking about something, you know. Let's promote this this way. Now, this is one idea, and I'd like to share a few more ideas, and I would like you to take part in some of them, actually. This is something which is called hashtag activity. It's not my idea. I stole it from Jimmy Fallon, American TV show host, and you know, once a week he publishes, you know, a hashtag on his Twitter, I mean, like the show's Twitter. And then he says, you know what, people, you know, this is like the hashtag. If you could share your stories connected with the hashtag, right? So, you know, some of these hashtags are kind of like the car I hated, for example, or, you know, the worst Thanksgiving in my life, or why I'm afraid of clowns, or why I hate Santa, or something like whatever. So this is what the hashtag is. And then, you know, he says, okay, people, so write. And people write, you know, this is Twitter. So this is the idea. Twitter, so, you know, whatever people write must be really short. Okay. And here's the idea behind like those hashtags. You know, you've come to a class, you know, you've just finished listening, you've just finished talking, listening about food. And then, you know, you have lots of ideas, I suppose. So, well, you go to your students and you kind of like explain the idea, the hashtag, and you tell your students, so now, can you please write a tweet to me, the strangest food in my life. So people, can you please now in the chat window, in the next minute or so, can you please write the strangest food you've ever eaten in your life? So go ahead. I'm waiting for your ideas. I'll be reading. Probably everybody's going to be reading them. Okay, sallow. Okay, I'll be thinking what the strangest food. Oh, I think I know. It's a certain kind of, like, once when I was in France, I had snails and yeah, borscht, seashells. Okay, pumpkin pie. Okay, snake, chicken with peach. That's surprising. Fried lamb. God, very tasty. Frogs. Okay, I tried frog legs. They were okay. They were okay. I don't know if you have in Ukraine this kind of food, but you know, in Poland we call it kiszka, and we make it out of like pig's intestine. You clean it, and then you put like potatoes, mashed potatoes inside it. You close it, you fry it. It's like one of the best kinds of food I've ever had. But you know, people, if you think about that, it's really weird. It's really strange. You know, talk to anybody. Like in England, I talked to my a friend I had, like an English teacher, and I described this kishka and said, like, no, I would never be able to eat that. You know, it's like too far in the digestive system. So, tomatoes jam, isn't that ketchup? Mushrooms with fish. Yeah, we have so much. Oh, you call it potato sausage. All right. Oh, nutrius meat. People say it's tasty, but I don't know. It's almost like a rat. Kishka is strange. I mean, I love it. Kishka is great, but you know, it is strange. Think about it. Okay. Okay, buckwheat and blood. This is kashanka. We also love it. Okay. So thank you for being so positive. But you know, the idea is, you know, think people what's happening right now. Okay, we're not writing a lot, but kind of imagine what happens in the class if you have it, even if you have it in an online version, you have like a chat. Your students will write, and people go like, "Hippo and apple? You have to tell me about that." And then you'll have a story. You know, people will talk about food, like hippo meat. That must be fat, I suppose. Okay, so you know, you'll get this. You'll get this kind of those stories. You know, students. You have those different kinds of food, and you know, you'll say, okay, now so you can work in groups. You know, I know which again platform you use, but if you use, like, for example, Zoom, you can go to breakout rooms and you tell us, okay, now talk about this strangest food in your life, and you know, discuss what it tasted like. You know, and you know, see, so we started with thinking about food. We started with kind of priming our students for the listening. Then we had the listening, we focused, we analyzed, we worked with the way, you know, the task is concerned, and then we're using it to the advantage of our students. You know, we're helping them speak. And speaking of food, the only thing that's better than talking about food is actually eating, I suppose. Okay, not speaking and eating at the same time because it's impolite, but yeah, that's the idea. All right. Now, another idea that you can like, again, you know, after this listening, especially when we're back in our classrooms, which I hope is coming really, really soon. You know, after this listening, you know, you can ask your students, no, right, fine, we've talked, we had like talked about food, everybody's ready, we know what our favorite food is. So now, why don't you go and find someone who likes the same food as you? Right? It's like the basic form. Go and find someone who likes the same food as you, like the favorite, the best dish. But if you want to make it sound a little bit more complicated, like spice it up a little bit. Spice it up. That's a good idea. Spicy food. I like it. So if you want to spice it up, you know, you, for example, say, okay, fine. Find someone who likes the same food as you, but you have only 3 attempts to do it. So you can't talk to everyone. You have only 3 attempts. Look at the whole class, think, and go. You ask someone. If you find the same person, good for you. If you haven't, tough luck. If you go to talk to someone and you say, okay, so is your favorite food kishka? Yeah. Kishka and I think chłodnik is like holodiec, right? Holodiec. Good. So, you know, it's like my husband must eat what I like. That's pretty straightforward. Okay, so basically, you know, if you talk to each other, right? It's like if you don't guess, you again have a chance to talk to each other. Like, okay, so what do you like? What's your favorite food? Another idea, you know, for very, very short interaction, very short discussion after this listening, is like find someone who doesn't like your favorite food. Okay, but again, it's not just like doesn't like your favorite food, but you can work with that. You can go, you can just you find like, and so my favorite food is kishka. Let's say, right? My favorite food is kishka. So do you like kishka? No, I don't. Let me guess why. So it's not like you tell me why you don't like it, but I will guess. I think because you think that kishka is, well, has too many calories, or maybe the smell. Not everybody loves the smell of kishka, or maybe it's disgusting because it's the intestine, right? So again, we're talking about something we want our students to get involved. And if you take a look at this find someone who technique, it doesn't have to be about food. It can be about sport, likes the same sport as you, doesn't like the same sport as you. It can be about films, likes the same film as you, doesn't like the same films as you, right? So basically, it's not like I'm giving you an activity that works only with food. It's an activity that kind of works with lots of different, just like hashtags, any topic, to any topic, you can apply this. After listening, after having your students full of ideas in their heads, use it for communication. Give them a chance to speak. Maybe if you work with, like, find someone who doesn't like your favorite food, let's say, still thinking about kishka, the person, you don't like kishka, fine. Students, once you find someone who doesn't like your food, you get 45 seconds to convince this person why this food is great. And you go like, all right, so kishka is great because it's crispy, because, the potatoes inside are, a little bit kind of like they're mashed and they are soft, and you can find some sausage, fried sausage inside. People, okay, I'm going to finish in 5 minutes. Guess what I'm going to do? And I know what you are going to do. We're all going to eat, I suppose. Okay, so you take a look. You just like, so you get 45 seconds to convince someone to like what you do. And you tell the students you have only 45 minutes, so you get ready. You get ready for what's coming, because I'm not going to give you more time. You have to be quick. And if you tell someone, convince someone to like your favorite food, people really will fight to convince others to like the favorite food, because your favorite food is your favorite food and you love it, and everybody has to. Okay. Now you can also try the following technique. You can go to someone and say, you know what, why don't you find someone who will guess your favorite dish, but not like, look at me, what do I like? Well, I like kishka and I like borscht. I think I'm Ukrainian a little bit. So, basically, you go to someone and you tell this person, you know what, I'll give you 3 clues, only 3 clues, and you have to guess what my favorite dish is. So, for example, you can give the ingredients. You can say when you through the 3 ingredients. With kishka, that would be sausage, potatoes, and intestine. Very easy to guess, I suppose. If this is something, if you want your students to be like more creative, if they don't like easy challenges, you go for something like, okay, you can only give 3 words which are associated with this kind of food. One for color, one for taste, and one for one ingredient, right? So with kishka, it would be like brownish, taste heavenly, and probably like potatoes are the most important ingredient. Okay, so as you can see, we're kind of started with thinking about something, then we listen, and now we're using what we've listened to give our students a chance to communicate. And this, to me, is one full, wonderful listening lesson. This is a lesson in which you educate your students, you help them get to the point where they are not as stressed, because they will always be stressed thinking about the exams. They will always be stressed. They will be less stressed, while getting ready for the listening. When the listening is like, once you talk about food, listening is only part of the whole process. This stops being the scary thing we have to do today, or the stressful thing we have to do today. It just becomes part of the lesson, which started with thinking, imagining, self-reflecting, then talking about what we like, then guessing with pictures, then talking about food, then we listened to something, then we talked about the text, how it was made, how it was created, and then at the end, you finish everything with a discussion, so that your students feel like it was a cool lesson, and lucky, hopefully. And I can't guarantee, but hopefully in lots of situations, after a lesson like that, when you finish, your students will go from, I don't want to have a listening lesson, but they go like, you say, okay, so thank you very much, we have to finish, and go like, Now? So quickly? Is it really the time to finish? I suppose, and by the way, this is, I think, one of the greatest compliments I sometimes get from my students when I say, so it's time to finish the class, and they go like, really? So this means that was a great class, you know, this means we were in it, we were kind of flowing, we were enjoying it. So basically, if we work this way, we have a chance, you know, to create the opposite of the three wise monkeys. The smart monkeys, in a way, you know, monkeys who actually want to see what's around, and they want to experience the world, and they want to see what's in the text, and they want to see what happens next in the class. This will be the monkeys that will want to hear, they will want to listen to you, and they will learn, and they will be prepared for those examination tasks waiting for them. And we will have those really smart monkeys that will be really, really happy when they can speak, when they can share, when they can talk about the things that are really fascinating, that they have opinion about. And you know what? I can't really continue because I'm so hungry and my mouth is watering. So I will have to thank you. I'll have to say that, wow, you've been wonderful audience, and it's been really, really nice to talk to you. And I hope that, you know, one day, you know, you'll get those really, really cool, smart monkeys in your class. You know, that students, you know, will be ready and willing to listen, to see, and to share their opinions with you. So thank you very much, people. Bye-bye.
Jacek, I will summarize now the comments in our chat box. You are a fantastic speaker, giving a fantastic session on teaching listening. Really, I'm absolutely sure that now, after your session, everybody wants to have dinner, substantial dinner, I'm sure. Really, thank you very much for sharing not only your great practical ideas, but also for sharing your positivity and energy.
You know what? It's because I'm in my living room, but my kitchen is in front of me, and I'm right now
lucky you.
See my dinner.
Lucky you. Thank you, Jacek, very much. Hope to have you as a speaker in our next events.
I would be delighted.
Now I'm switching into Ukrainian and have a few very important announcements. Just a second. Колеги, дуже швидко хочу зробити кілька важливих оголошень. У Macmillan Education є програма партнерства, і багато хто з присутніх знає про неї і бере активну участь вже не перший рік. Ця програма, повний її текст є на нашому сайті, але якщо дуже коротенько, партнерство з нами дає вчителям та учням доступ до онлайн-тестів, доступ до пробного тесту ЗНО онлайн. Це договір про співпрацю з вашим навчальним закладом. Це для вас, як вчителів, участь у міжнародних проєктах, наш методичний супровід і можливість взяти участь у VIP-подіях, які ми влаштовуємо тільки для тих вчителів, які працюють з нашими підручниками. І квітень місяць, окрім серії вебінарів для вчителів початкової школи і для вчителів, які працюють з тінейджерами, квітень місяць – це ще й місяць, коли ми відкриваємо доступ вчителям і учням, які працюють з нашими підручниками, до банку онлайн-тестів. Ви бачите зараз на слайді, це 3 сета тестів, і я швиденько для тих, хто не знає, розкажу, що це таке. MELTS – це Macmillan English Language Testing System, і це онлайн-тести для учнів шкіл-партнерів у форматі кембриджських іспитів, які мають автоматичну перевірку і дають можливість здійснити незалежний моніторинг і видати рівень за сефром, на якому перебувають наразі ваші учні. І з 1 квітня ми відкриваємо доступ вчителям тих шкіл, які працюють тільки за підручниками видавництва Macmillan. Вам на пошту, на електронну надійде запрошення до цього тесту. З 15 квітня ми відкриваємо доступ до пробного тесту у форматі ЗНО 2021 року з автоматичною перевіркою. Минулого року ми відкривали його для всіх охочих, адже минулорічний локдаун був цілковитою несподіванкою для всіх, і ми вирішили зробити такий крок. В цьому році цей доступ відкриватиметься виключно тим вчителям та учням, які навчаються за оригінальним підручником Get 200, який було придбано у поточному навчальному році. У вас також буде лист на електронну пошту з проханням подати заявку, і тоді ми відкриємо вам і вашим учням доступ до цього тесту. І нарешті з 30 квітня вчителі, які працюють за будь-яким з підручників нашого видавництва, це і Academy Stars, English World, All Clear, Gateway, Laser, Optimizer, Get 200, для цих вчителів буде відкрито семестрові онлайн-тести, аудіювання, контроль аудіювання, контроль читання, граматика і лексика з 1 по 11 клас з автоматичною перевіркою. І також про це всім вчителям надійде лист з проханням зареєструватися, щоб отримати цей доступ. На цьому я завершую нашу сьогоднішню конференцію. Я переконана, що всі ми отримали величезне задоволення від наших спікерів, набралися неймовірно практичних ідей і підемо зараз обідати з чудовим настроєм і сподіваннями на наші наступні зустрічі. Ми є на Фейсбуці, у нас є Інстаграм і у нас є канал на Ютубі. Долучайтеся до нас, до нових зустрічей.